Hi, everybody, and welcome. I'm so incredibly excited to share with you. This is Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. I'm calling this semester 2023.2, and this is Level 1, Lesson 2. This particular sharing in the whiteboards is so jam-packed. There are 4 whiteboards, and literally each half-hour whiteboard I could do a 5-hour long lecture on. So it's so worth it to go into the whiteboards and watch what I'm sharing about there, because I certainly will do my best to take the most salient aspects of it and share with you here today, but there's always going to be extra stuff. So there's a lot of stuff about electromagnetism as science describes it, and what a solenoid is, and a lot of other really good stuff as it relates to the toroid or torus or chakra shape that I have here. I'm just trying to find a way to hold it up so you can actually see it against my crazy backdrop here. But I'm not going to emphasize that. So watch it. Do your homework, guys. Do your homework. How do you access the whiteboards? Become a fully enrolled student. I love everyone who is a non-official or casually enrolled student on YouTube. Thank you, and thank you for watching my stuff. If you want to watch the whiteboards, simply become a patron on Patreon or contact me via the enrollment link, the AIDA form that I always keep in the description of all of these, and that way I can send you the links to the whiteboards. The whiteboards, for anyone who's a returning student, used to be on teachable.com. I changed in this semester because teachable.com no longer is doing their hosting, blah, blah, blah. You have to pay a lot more money. And so I am switching over to my Vimeo. So the upshoot of this is, if you're a returning student from 5 or 10 years ago, welcome back. You're always welcome back. If you can't find those original links to the whiteboard lessons, they're not going to be available on Teachable for much longer. Contact me. I'll give you the whiteboard links. Showcase or playlist is what they call them, showcases, on Vimeo. Showcase on Vimeo. Showcase on Vimeo. Hooray! Do your homework. So, Level 1, Lesson 2. This is basically, simply put, called the shape. It is all about this as a shape. Again, I keep holding it up, kind of in front of my face where you can see it. This double torus or 4 vortex chakra shape is so profound. And I go back into my work and I watch my own videos from 10 years ago, and I'm like, mind blown. So profound. I am amazed every time I revisit it. I'm like, there's so much good stuff there. There's so much there to think about. So if you are someone who's already watched the videos, it's worth it to rewatch. And if you've never watched the whiteboards, watch them for the first time. There's so much deep stuff there that when you come at it from your next perspective, you're like, wow, there's just amazing insights to be gained from that. And I'm also happy and proud to say that it's my job joy to share this information with you. And there's not very many no one else that I'm aware of in this world who is sharing this information. So it's my job joy, and it's something that you won't find other places. And that's why I always make sure to make it clear, if you need a scholarship for tuition, if you want to join the class fully or be on board with all those whiteboards, no problem. Just ask for a scholarship, because the tuition, of course, is required. I need to keep my electricity flowing and pay my studio rent and other things like that. And also, what matters the most is that I am disseminating these ideas into the fabric of reality to humanity, because that is what helps to change and shift the totality structure of time from being slightly at an angle, going towards destruction or no longer longevity, towards being completely in alignment up and down. So one of the big things, I'll just jump right in. Sometimes I get new insights and I recognize new things that I have to share or emphasize. So first I'm going to go right here to this pretty well-known image that I share with you all the time. And I just minimize other people's faces, not because I don't love you, but for your privacy, because people haven't agreed, like, would you like to have your face on the screen during YouTube? Not everybody has agreed to that. So let me just grab a color here. Big emphasis. If I put this dot over here, it doesn't actually reside there. It actually resides, there's screen gobbledygook in the place where I actually want to put it. Let's put it in the right spot. This white dot, emphasized object not drawn to scale, represents the zeroth dimension, or where the energy impulses of pure light and pure consciousness are coming from. You could think of it as God or the stellar network of great brain in the sky, supermassive black hole, places that are higher dimensional, more informed, greater perspective, more intelligence, literally put, smarter than present level of the human octave. Then let's make a slice. Here's the human octave. Boom, boom. And I'm happy I turned on my piano because here's an octave. All right, starting from C. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, back to red or white light. That is an octave. That's the slice of the frequency pie that we define as human. Now, there's also this dot over here. And that what you are trying to do, your goal for everything that is about your chakras, which I will describe more as to what this shape is and what its significance is to have all of them in perfect alignment so that the energy impulse of pure divine intelligence, if my pen worked perfectly, that would be a perfectly straight line up and down that connects your physicality presence, your somatic cellular body, the experiences of the five senses realm of what we know as being a physical person in matter and stuff, connected in a perfectly aligned integration with this, the origins of consciousness, pure energy, energy at infinity speed, light speed, total infinity, and total knowingness. That is what you want. When I hold up your chakras at an angle, and I showed you, sometimes we have chakras going at an angle. I'll just choose a color like this. If you have one going at an angle like this, what that means is that there is not this perfectly straight conduit. Like you can think of this like a tube, like a garden hose or something like that. And if you have it at an angle like that, the energy cannot flow effectively through there. That is when you experience friction. That is when you experience entropy or loss of energy, and the friction in moving through time that leads to your death. So the big emphasis here is that you want to be aligning all of your chakras with that central core timeline. That is your timeline of infinity. When you are aligned with that timeline of infinity, you are experiencing the events that lead to your eternal presence in time. No more dying and being recycled, eternal presence in time. And that it can take many trial and error attempts to find the right iteration. Iteration is a math word that means combination of variables or attempt. Oops, hold on a second, just picking this crystal. Attempt to solve a problem or a particular grouping of variables that you can do. Like, is it a trial and error attempt? An iteration is a trial and error attempt. Is it this version? Is it this version? Is it this version? Is it this version? You keep coming up with the next version of reality. So you no longer, when you are on the path of least likelihood, you have attained your eternal self, and what you are doing is aligning with the event structure that leads to eternal life, where you no longer die, you no longer hit the membrane of death, you no longer circulate or recycle back around to the beginning and have these slightly incrementally upgraded experiences. You have done all of the research, you have done all of the attempts, and you finally find the exact right recipe for all of the things that you have to do and see and experience, and most important, belief structure to believe in the right set of ideas that will lead you forward into longevity and coherence, meaning that your light form sticks together. So let me just erase one thing here. What you're looking at here in terms of your chakras, which again, I re-emphasize, chakra means spinning wheel of energy, and these are comprised entirely of time. So some people call this your light body. It's totally fine and accurate to call this your light body. In my class, we can also call it the time body. It is a body of pure possibilities and probabilities. So if you define it as your light body, that's totally cool. Light being defined as intelligence or data, sentience, awareness, information, orderliness. It is an abstraction because I must make a distinction between this light body and optical light. Optical light is what you see if you are a sighted individual beaming out of your phone or your TV or your tablet or whatever screen you are using to be able to watch this video. Optical light is the light that we perceive with our eyeballs and our physical retinas coming from the sun and the stars, or coming from a campfire, or coming from a light bulb in your room. Optical light is a very small slice of the electromagnetic frequency pie. What I am painting here is non-optical light. I am painting light that is the information of the highest dimensional cognitive processes of the larger event timescale, alive structure, divine mind. These are thoughts in the mind of God. And the big emphasis that I wanted to make as I'm delving into the specifics of all of these chakras and all of these timelines is that all of these timelines and all of these energy centers and layers of reality are you. That it's really essential not to make a distinction and to say, well, like, here's my fleshy physical body. I've got 2 arms and 2 legs and 1 face and 2 ears, and I sit here in a chair, and then I have this ephemeral energy stuff that's flying around me that's like kind of energy stuff, kind of me, not really me. No, I really want you to emphasize and internalize the truth that these energy force fields around you are you. Here is the literalism of the teaching. And if you're wondering what I'm doing these energy clearings with my crystals, because sometimes as I get going, I receive, because it's incredible information that I'm trying to share, I get a lot of flack as I am trying to share this information with you. So please don't be distracted, and I won't be distracted either as I put up these protective force fields so that I can actually do my work here in the world. Your light body over here, your time body, in how exactly is this thing over here made up out of you? Because I want you to really know it. And I also want you to see the right thing. I want you to see this thing. Nothing is working. Okay, I hope that you're seeing the right picture. I'm going to make a line down here that I usually use. This is time diagram stuff, all right? In the time diagram, I always do that, and I'll always have this is the singularity or the wormhole there, and I'm emphasizing these 2 places as the membrane of death, a flowing membrane, all right? And the concept here is that this is infinity, and I'll talk a lot today about infinity and the zeroth dimension, and that you are emanated. I'm just choosing a random color here. This green impulse is you being emanated outward from infinity and from the singularity into physicality presence. And that is a big part of the journey. You are initially emanated outward, for lack of a better term, or into greater levels of densification. And everything about the layers of your chakras represent different levels of density of energy and perception and cognition and awareness. And then you coalesce over here where I'm making a big giant green scribble, you coalesce as physical matter. So here you are, like, you're a light form, you're a wave form, you're an abstraction, you're an impulse, you're an impulse, you're an impulse, you're an impulse. Boom, you come here, you become stuff. You become what is defined in the human world as stuff that is defined as the world of physical matter. And then this whole journey of going through this refinery of consciousness known as the chakra system has to do with re-attaining light speed, going from being matter, which is stuff, which is a certain level of physical density, in reintegrating directly into the world of pure light or pure energy. And so I've already described how you do that through this process of going through these various different iterations or wrong notes on the piano until you finally get to this over here, which is the path of least likelihood, which is the pathway back to the source that is also the destination in your attainment. I just faltered there for a minute. I want to make sure that I pull up my notes too. So wait, let me go to stop share. Hold on a second. Things are happening. Let me pull up my notes, because I'm also going to make sure that I get everything good. Get everything covered that I want to get covered. And let me also speak to the chat. Marie says, and you had achieved eternal self before coming here. Thank you. Beautiful question. Okay, so I'm already jumping offline from my notes. Don't worry about it. So yeah, I, Aurora, have lived in a time that would be known as ancient or concurrent Atlantis, because this is a fractal reality structure here. This world of mortality is a fractal reality structure of that life experience there, okay? In that life experience there, I did what people do in that world, which is emanate into physical reality according to the brochure of perfect, ideal embodiment. And we emanate or emanated into physicality structure. Birth and embodiment was a very different process in that world, and no one ever lost divine connection in coming here into physicality. Then you have all sorts of amazing experiences. No one ever hit the membrane of death. So another way of thinking about this is, in that world, everybody's chakras remain in perfect alignment. No wobbling back and forth. Perfect alignment up and down. Remember, I drew that white line connecting the white dot up here, up above your head, and the dot representing physical reality. Everybody in that world stayed in that level of perfect focus and alignment, so that you maintained connection to divine intelligence throughout the entirety of the experience of being here in physical embodiment form. So individuation, and when I talk to you about individuation, this will also relate to when I teach you about building the dimensions and how the zeroth dimension first got the idea of, like, what if I jumped into another dimension and kind of put a part of myself in a different spot. There's nothing wrong or evil about individuation, about going away from the source, or individuating from continuity, unity consciousness, in order to say, I'm me. I am me, having a experience of separation. And this is what, in the highest sense of the definition of what spiritual attainment seekers talk about, that it is part of your journey to be here. You have chosen individuation, which is often described as duality, thing versus not thing, or self versus not self, in order to have the expansive increase in your wisdom through the process of separation from God self, and then the increase in your wisdom from the re-attainment, ascension. That moment when it's like, ding, 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 I'm God, I'm back, I'm connecting to myself again. When we lived in Atlantis, you never left. You individuated into a physicality structure that is your own definition of yourself, even while maintaining a total connection to divine intelligence and God consciousness, which basically means that that level of yourself, God self, guided your thoughts and your emotions and every single decision and life experience that you manifested and experienced all throughout your whole entire life as embodiment. You never were flying blind. You never were cut off with no cell phone communication. You'd be like, my GPS is out, I don't know where the F I'm going. We never had that. And in that sense, if you have God positioning system continually functional in your chakra system, your attainment is inevitable, and you never hit the membrane of death, because your death sensor is like, beep, 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 go in the wrong direction, get over here, go in the right direction. So yeah, I experienced that level of individuation, having adventures and learning and growing, and then the inevitable ascension out of that level of reality and into the level of reality of floating around, kind of like creating a band or a coherent world seed in the atmosphere of this planet. And then with my band, or my Aurora Collective, was able to untether from the planet and go on a journey, bouncing as a neural signal between the stars as a thought structure in the greater brain of reality. That's my journey as a soul named Aurora. And then from that, and what did I do? What we bounced around as a neural impulse, going through all these different star portals. It wasn't just like, random, like, coolness, just doing whatever's cool. It had very, very strong purpose in what we did and what we do, bouncing to star system and star system on missions of uplift, rectification, and healing. very similar to what I'm doing here. All of that stuff that I did was muscle building and preparation on a soul level to be able to come here into this time place. Because after doing many different missions and bouncing around a lot and doing a lot of healing, rectifying, and restructuring the cosmos at that level, I perceived great injustices that were happening in this particular body, in this particular life of a particular woman in 2001 in upstate New York, United States. And I, as Aurora, myself as an individual within that collective, said, I am going to do something because this stuff isn't fair. And that is, where's my sculpture? That is the moment that I spontaneously created the flying rainbow lasagna, oscillated into this body structure, and have been having this concurrent life experience for over 20 years. So I am new to having the type of body where you can't just eat pure sunlight. When I first came here, I'm like, duh. You're going to say duh. I'm going to say, of course. I'm like, I'm just going to eat pure sunlight. And I didn't know, like, oh, you have to do more than eat pure sunlight here. You have to eat like papaya smoothies, scrambled eggs, avocados, and other good stuff. I did not know that because I thought, like, this is like the brochure, the way that it was. It's just not the way that it was. My shoulders go down. We laugh. But yeah, steep learning curve as me, a fish out of water, learning all the different ways in which this is my SpongeBob face. This time place is different than the time place that I came from, because not only do you have to eat physical food, they tie up all the food in the food room, you need magical pieces of paper to access that food, and also there's a lot of bad stuff here, like there's psychopathology, there's sexual violence, there's all of these things, there's lies, there's things that you have to protect yourself from. And I'm really like, la la la, I didn't know that you have to protect yourself from all of those things. So steep learning curve for me to learn about the dysfunctions at this level of society. And that also has given me, of course, a lot of guidance in terms of what needs to be fixed and healed here, because my flying rainbow lasagna is a rectification tool. So my presence here right now is very much like if you are a grad student and then all of a sudden you kind of go back and matriculate to kindergarten. Without exaggeration, that is what I'm doing. But this is like kindergarten here. Like, this is different than when I went to kindergarten. They do things differently here. So I had to, like you guys, learn everything from the beginning, even though I was in chronological adulthood. And also, I am here in this level of reality to exemplify to you, how do you do it? It wouldn't be the same if I was just on my interdimensional cloud, like being so comfortable, like doing the backstroke. Everything is so great. There's no problems whatsoever. And to be just like, guys, like, here's the answer, just ascend. Here's the lasagna, trying to like toss it over my shoulder. Bye, see ya. I'm off to whatever, get my cosmic nails done or whatever. You know, like some luxurious thing. But no, that would be very facile, because you guys would all be like, Aurora, like, this is very, very hard to do. And, you know, you're up there where everything is easy, and we're down here where everything is hard. So I am here along with you. And instead of just tossing it over my shoulder and being like, yep, lasagna, just lasagna, guys. It's cool. That's how you do it. I'm like, lasagna, here's how I do it with my body form. Here's how I do this flying rainbow lasagna dance with my DNA structure of this body that I inhabit, of this life, of this time structure, so that you guys can take it and run with it and do something similar. So what I do is I lasagna with my body, and it's a template, and I send out those waves to everyone else as an example, to be like, this is how I lasagna in my body. And if you want to lasagna too, you can in your body. But the solution is going to be different for each person, because just like doing a Rubik's Cube, you have to kind of like twist these different vectors of the sides of the cube in order to bring all the sides into completion. And every time you do the solution, it's slightly different. It's not always a one-size-fits-all solution. Like whatever, 1 + 1 = 2. The equation is slightly different every time. The solution for each one of you in terms of rectifying and healing not only your genetic code, but also your field of probabilities, your probability field, which is what your light body field is around you, is unique to you, because you have unique trajectories of where you were born in time, where your soul is coming from, what your soul is going to do, and where your soul is going to go. And then the solution has to be unique to you. It's not a one-size-fits-all. So one person is born in New York, one person is born in Africa, whatever, you know, just trying to think of more specific places. One person is born in, Cairo, Egypt. One person is born in Australia. And then these people do not have the same time-space coordinates. They do not have the same ancestry. They do not have the same life experiences or substrate within which they are embedded. And you must find and create and generate your own unique solution to how to get on that path of least likelihood, and what is the exact series of events, and what do you need to believe and think in your mind in order for you to achieve coherence and longevity and be an eternity particle. So the answer is not the same for all of us. If I took my template for what I think and believe in the exact thought structure, and I kind of like imagine like a helmet, like I take it off of my head and I kind of like plop it onto someone else's head, that would not fit. It would not work. You have to internalize what I am sharing with you and then customize it to your own life. You have to see it through your own filter. You have to do your own unique genetic dance from where you are coming from to where you are going to, so that you have this perfect bridge or integument set of ideas and experiences that leads you towards eternal life. And that's part of the strength of the system, of complexity, of time, and the unhackability of the system. Because if you get one person gets hacked, it's like, oh no, that guy got hacked. But it's not hacking the entirety of all DNA everywhere, because you're unique, you're unique, you're unique, you're unique. So everybody has their own unique life signature, soul signature, and DNA structure and behavior. And the genius of the design of the cosmos is that there's so much complexity. And then that is also part of your mandate as an individual. You are God and I am God. And we have both individuated into our unique containers and unique soul trajectory presences. The solutions for me are unique to me. You have to find your own solutions. And you can get a lot of inspiration and guidance from how other people do it. But you don't do it exactly the same way, but you take what they've done and you internalize it. You get inspired or energized by seeing what they've done and what is possible for them. I already joked with people. I'm never drinking wine in class. This is my beautiful structured water, and if it looks cloudy, it's because I added a bunch of minerals to it as part of my health regimen. So you can look to me. I've done a lot of neurological and physical healing and restructuring in this body. Clearly, I walk, I talk, I dance, I move both sides of my body. I do everything. And that's all possible due to flying rainbow lasagna. So some other person with a neurological, challenge or an injury might come forward and be like, wow, can I take the same exact thing that you did and put it on my life? I'm saying not the same exact thing, but you can take the concept or the idea of what is possible in me becomes possible in you. And then your virtuosity is the application of this to your unique presence. And I, as a teacher, it would be irresponsible of me as a teacher to say, I'm going to take a direct imprint and stick it on you. No, because that's like if you have an art teacher, and if the art teacher is like, you're painting your painting all wrong, let me do it for you. I'll paint it like this, paint it like this, paint it like this. Like I'm horrified when I see that happening in art classes. Because no, art teachers, the responsibility or role that an art teacher plays is to unlock or make available to the student their own voice and their own artistry. So I want you to find your own genetic artistry. I want each one of you to be inspired by my journey, but for you to take the relevant patterns of what I've done and run with it and make it your own. So if I wrote a song, if the song had a melody, ba 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 ba, I want you to take that melody and I want you to play it on a saxophone, and I want you to play it on a tuba, and I want you to play it on some percussive xylophone type of instrument, whatever is your unique body form. And I want you to play it in the rhythm that is appropriate to your embeddedness in time, because that is how you heal the time field. So yeah, I'm a teacher, I'm a creative mentor, I'm an inspirer, but I'm not like a despot, like a dictator that is like, you must do it this way and do it in exactly the way that I do it. That is not my philosophy, and I find that is not efficacious. That is why I don't embrace that style of teaching or sharing with others. So yeah, I share and I exemplify, but you all have to take your these templates for experience and then customize them and custom make them to your own life experiences. And then I get so excited when I see people doing that, and they take these ideas and they, like, you know, like, imagine like somebody gives you a dress or whatever, you're like, okay, it's great, but like it's very blousy around here, it doesn't really fit, or like maybe too tight across the chest, and you like totally take it, cut it with scissors, expand it, change it, you know, and then you like, it fits you perfectly. I get so excited when I see that. I'm like, hooray, hooray. So please, you know, do that. Make me proud. Take these ideas. Thank you for attenuating to these ideas. Thank you for internalizing them, making them a part of your own structure. And then thank you for customizing them to your own life experience. And another big part of what I teach is that every time you ingest a new idea, that is part of what determines what is the shape, direction, and behavior of your chakras. So what initially has made chakras to go askew or out of alignment from that perfect being a conduit for divine light and intelligence is a set of ideas, or are a set of ideas. And then the rectification is the ingestion of the healing or improvement ideas that incrementally get you back in alignment with God, the source. It's considered to be like true north in the compass rose, like get you in touch with that truthful direction of where you're supposed to be. And so these ideas that I present to you here are a very intentional recipe for rectification. And that's how I structured my class. Like, first learn this, then think about this, then think about this, and all of this is going to make you go zhoop until you are back in touch with God and with your divine alignment and with these concepts that bring you towards longevity and coherence. So it is exactly like looking down a tunnel. Like if you were like looking down like an actual tunnel, like that is what you could think of your spine is shaped like, and that is what you can think of these chakras as being shaped like. If I go back also to a little bit of what I want to, because this is some of my insights, like I literally, guys, like I think about all this stuff all the time, and I fell asleep thinking about it last night. And here's one of the things that I fell asleep thinking about. I'm like, I want to emphasize this to you. So okay, so one of the things when I draw these chakras and I draw it, you know, it's like, here's a cross section of a chakra, right? Not drawn that perfectly. And then you've got, here's like a person, and you know, here's the person, and here's your stick figure with your arms and your legs, and that's kind of how this works. And then of course you have smaller chakras all throughout there. But within, now I'm going to draw just like a big giant, you know, kind of whatever, amorphous blob, anthropomorphic amorphous blob, anthropomorphous blob. Each one of these humans has an enormous number of cells within you. These are all of your different cells, and every single one of your cells has a chakra system. And so let me see if I can make my pen a little bit smaller here. Every single one of your cells has a chakra system. So for example, here would be the red chakra of this cell. And this one has one too, but with this one we're going to make it kind of going at an angle so that you can see that one's not a very, very healthy cell. That one's actually not in perfect alignment with the source. And so what you want to be able to do is have these chakras in perfect alignment. Like that's a yellow line. I hope you can see that. That one goes up and down perfectly. This one goes side to side. So this one that's going up and down perfectly connects it to this divine presence here and this divine presence here, and then the energy oscillates up and down. That's a beautiful, perfect battery. Beautiful, perfect energy conduit. This one over here, here's the one at the top, here's the one at the bottom. It's not getting 100% of all that energy. Here it might get some, but then some of it is stuck. Energy is stuck. Energy is stuck. It kind of comes along. It's like a broken circuit where it might only get 3%. Can't even write a 3 with this pen. It's very, very hard for me to write with these pens. I get upset, guys. Don't let me get upset. That's a 3% cell. So in this process of what ascension is, go back to my face. This process of what ascension is and what happens when your entire apparatus of chakras goes from being at an angle like this to being in perfect alignment with the path of least likelihood is every single one of the cellular structures of your body that has its individual chakras or energy centers or energy field or time field surrounding it of possibilities and probabilities goes from being an imperfect conduit to being a perfect conduit. Every single one of the cells of your body gets into alignment and becomes a perfect conduit to reconnect to divine life force energy, events and possibilities in the time field, divine intelligence presence, kind of like informing you about your life and about what you should do. And that's everything. That is everything from what you say, how you hold your posture, where you're going in every minute, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and like I say this again, most importantly, what you believe. Let me just drink more. What you believe, the basic substrate of your expectations about reality, what is possible, and where reality generates or springs forth from in terms of your cosmology, the narrative story structure of how you believe or what you believe creates reality in each moment. Thought structure has everything to do with longevity and coherence. So I talk about this. When you come here as a little tiny child, it is not even a part of your belief structure to know about and believe in death. And then almost everyone here gets indoctrinated. At a certain point, you learn language, you don't really know about death, but then you learn language as a way of getting information from other people, get information from other people, and at a certain point, you learn about death before you even experience death or know that it is a possibility. And before you know about death, your DNA is literally doing this expansive, amazing dance. Oscillating, doing stuff, splicing itself, unsplicing itself, coming together, splitting apart, creating all these reality generation events. And then at a certain point, you find out as an intellectual event about the existence of death, and it becomes incorporated into the foundation of your belief system. And you start to dance with your DNA differently. All of a sudden, that becomes woven into the expectation of what you think life is about, and all of these expectations of death being an inevitable part of life, death being an inevitable part of the fabric of existence that was woven in by Creator. There's a lot of stuff here. So I'm just going to say the basics for right now, because technically we're still at the beginning of the semester, even though I have so many wonderful returning students who already know all about this. But humanity has been genetically modified many times. So what makes humans gravitate towards or accept and internalize the truthfulness of the inevitability of death is literally genetic modifications towards your diminishment. It is the creation of what humans know as telomeres, or these caps that are put onto the reproductive, the capacity to produce new cells, and to produce new cells in each generation and in each moment that are going to continue to live, as opposed to having a finite lifespan. That basically you were genetically modified to have a finite lifespan, and the cells of your body were told a false story about how many times they can replicate and stay alive in longevity and coherence in the physicality structure. And I'm here to tell you and offer to you on the plate of ideas a different approach. That's what I can do. I can't force you, like, to twist your arm. Here's me making a mean face. Get immortal, get immortal. Like, twist your arm, be like, like, you have to do it. No, and I would never do that. And that also exemplifies everything about who I am as a higher dimensional being and what life is like at the levels of higher dimensional beingness. So I am Aurora, and I'm a higher dimensional being and a collective, and we exist in a place of pure cosmic law and pure freedom. Cosmic law and freedom go hand in hand, because you, on the one hand, have a set of cosmic laws that uphold the structure of reality, and on the other hand, you have freedom. We're like, okay, you're free to do what you want to do within this substrate of cosmic laws, which includes, stuff coming back to you. What you send out comes back to you. And if you attempt to diminish or override someone else's freedom, then you get to have your freedom diminished, and you don't get to do that to someone else. But freedom is a substrate to wisdom, higher wisdom attainment. So it would be antithetical to cosmic law and structure of the cosmos and everything that I agree upon and exemplify for me to come here and be like, that's it, I'm just going to force you to do immortality, do what I want you to do with your DNA. Can't do it. Can't do it. All I can do is offer to you and be like, look, guys, this is what I do with my DNA. Look, I'll point to the sculpture. This is what I do with my DNA. And if you want to do something similar, you can do it too. And here's a whole class about it. And thank you for listening to my 3-hour-long weekly lectures about how to actually do it, because that's how you do it. That you start to internalize these new ideas, you start to attenuate to and align with a new set of ideas and value system, and then that brings you in alignment with these greater reality structures. So just as you once as a child attenuated to the truthfulness of the adults around you who told you death is a thing, death is inevitable, one day you will die, everyone you know will die, and children go through existential crises thinking about that, and then the different fears that people have based upon that humans develop a reality identity. Like, this is the person that I am, but I'm not going to be here for forever. And then there's religiousness that comes in there too, of the sense of describing what afterlife is and who you'll be at in the afterlife and all these different things. And I'm not here to piss and poop all over your beautiful religions and your deeply held beliefs, but I'm here to tell you that they have an inherent flaw in the expectation of and acceptance of the necessity or inevitability of death. Because death was really not the inherent program for what you were supposed to experience in coming here into physicality structure. That death is kind of what happens when you drive over a cliff and do the wrong math, but that was not intentional for what you are supposed to be experiencing here in doing the correct math in being alive and in staying alive. So what I do is I give you a new way to be able to fix and rectify your genetic behavior. That's what Flying Rainbow Lasagna is. And of course, it's the beginning of the class, but I'll teach you all about how to actually do the dance. You rectify your DNA so that you no longer have those genetic modification programs that came from humanity's diminishers that try to keep you from your immortality and try to keep you on the hamster wheel of recycling and try to prevent you from remembering your God self. Instead, you get to stay alive, remain coherent and in longevity, and remember your God self in this generation. That's big stuff. And that's what's happening. It's painting over my shoulder, planetary ascension. So you ascend, the cells on your body ascend, everybody clicks into alignment with that path of least likelihood, including the planet. Yeah, hold on. So now let me just speak in abstractions, because I'm talking a lot on the level of anthropomorphism, which is the level of human experience. But what I'm most comfortable with is talking about empirical information on the level of pure abstractions. And then this will inform your experience as a human being, embodied experiencer. So first, let's clear all this out. The first thing is, I draw these, clear everything. I draw these chakra shapes. And you're like, this is a cross-section of one of those chakra shapes. And mostly what I emphasize is this lower quadrant as being one incarnation, and this as being a time vortex, which, although this is a flat representation on your screen, is known to be a volumetric shape which has time spirals that travel upward. So the first thing is, we're going to talk a lot about the singularity, which is this convergence point right here. But I also really want to emphasize that within this shape, as I'm talking about it in class, we tend to almost abstractify all of these timelines and all of this stuff. Like, it's energy. It is energy, and it is events, and it is events or are events in reality. But every single one of these event structures in reality is you. Like, you're this stick figure here with your arms and your legs, with all of this stuff swirling around you. But the stuff that is swirling around you is you. It's not something else or something separate from you. It is you. Every single one of these little lines over here represents a story of how you were born. If we look at this line over here as year 0 and your birth, and if we look at this diagram as time marching forward in this direction, back towards the source that emanated you into physicality structure. Every single one of these represents a timeline, and I'm going to teach you about the structure of reality. And these timelines are a story. Like, here's an example of a story. I woke up in the morning. I stretched. I yawned. I got up. I hugged my dog. I made coffee. I made breakfast bread. Ate my bread. I watched an informative video. I painted a painting. I ate my lunch. I ate my dinner. I got into my pajamas and I went to bed again. All right. This is a narrative structure, right? And that's you in that narrative structure. That these are not, when you're talking about dealing with energy or dealing with your chakras or dealing with your energy centers, these are not something other than you. These are the stories of you, and these represent many parallel and peripheral versions of self and stories of you. So my day this morning went like I woke up and I stretched and I hugged my dog and I made coffee and I, watched my videos and I prepared for class. But I have another version of me that woke up 2 minutes earlier or that lounged about in bed 2 minutes later, a slightly divergent reality structure. And you have many, many, many multiple, an almost uncountable number of these slightly divergent reality structures or different versions of your life or different iterations of the math structure of who and what you are in terms of event 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 10 million equals the final moment of your life. And this is a probability structure. So when I show you this sculpture over here and I draw these vortices for you, please internalize that what you are looking at are probability structures, and that means the probabilistic nature of what can happen in your life. In this diagram that I just drew for you, there is a very, very high probability that you will be on a red timeline, but let's choose a different color. There is a very, very minimal probability that you will be on this green timeline. Why is that? Because there's only one green timeline. And in this, I've simplified it, but in this reality structure, there's technically 10 million, billion, 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 trillion red reality structures. So many different timelines that terminate here on the membrane of death, an almost uncountable number of versions of you. So I'm telling you this because I want you to care about this as more than just a mere abstraction. Let me also come back to this. I'm going to keep re-emphasizing it in this painting over here because I think it shows it so well. Like, wait, here's that green timeline that I just drew for you, path of least likelihood, and then here's the beginning, your birth, right here. It's not a straight line at the bottom, and then membranes of death, membrane of death, membrane of death, and then singularity here at the center. And that it's not an abstraction to say like, wait, let me just color in a color. This stuff all around me here, it's all just energy. It is energy, but you know what that energy is? They are the probability fields that represent different events in your life. So this little timeline that I'm drawing here, you woke up in the morning, you blah, 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 and then, over here is where you died. Yep, you got in a car wreck. You went out to buy some coconut milk for your coffee in the morning, whatever happened, and then you got hit by a truck and you died. Because I want you to care. I want you to care about these and not just be so abstractified that you look at it, it's just like energy, schmenergy, it doesn't really matter. No, it really matters. It matters a lot to you. All of this stuff around here, around your physicality body, matters a lot to you. It is relevant to you. It is the definition of whether you are either alive or dead, healthy or suffering, enlightened and aware, or totally blinded and lacking in perception. And that there are some probability fields that you want to be aligning with. You want to align with this central core timeline, the path of least likelihood, because that is although the least likely, the lowest probability of 1 in whatever, 10 million, billion, gazillion, that's the one pathway that leads you to continued existence. And so now you can start to comprehend when I talk about my life and my life experience ascending in, what is a different level of reality and the inevitability of everybody ascending. It's like, wow, the likelihood of that is incredibly low. You're right. The chances, just probabilistically, statistically, of every single creature and every single organism on a planet inevitably ascending and no one is hitting the membrane of death, would be so astronomical. Like, the chances of winning the lottery, like one chance, 1 in 10 to the 32 million trillion trillionth exponent. Incredibly low likelihood. So how did that happen? And the answer is it happened through inner vision. Leaning closer so you can see the tendril of attention. When you have your inner vision and you have your tendril of attention active, you can sense the future. You don't just go randomly, like, what's the right note on the piano? Is it this one? Wait, turn it up so you can actually hear. Is it this one? That's not the right note. This one? No, that's not it. No, that's not it. No, that's not it. No, that's not it. Not it, not it, not it, not it. All of those are deaths. You don't want to do that because that's all death, death, death. When you can read music, you're like, I need to play a C sharp. That's the note that I'm looking for, and you know that that's the right note because you can read music and you can see the piano. That is what it is like to have your higher faculties active and to be able to sense the future with your tendril of attention. So if you are sensing, like, those proximity sensors on a truck as they're backing up, it goes beep, 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 and then as it gets closer and closer, like you're backing up towards like garbage pails or whatever, like you're almost going to hit the garbage pails, like beep, 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 like, you're about to crush something, stop going. That is what death is. It is a proximity sensor, and fear is actually supposed to be the proximity sensor, like the beeping that tells you beep, fear, 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 like you're getting someplace that you're not supposed to get to. So that's the original intention for what fear is. Fear is a proximity sensor to the membrane of death. I will just choose a fear color. Fear is going to be orange. So that would be right around here. Right before you hit the membrane of death, as your timeline is going fear, fear, fear. Here, you're fine. Fear, 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 fear. You're almost dead. You're supposed to feel afraid so that you go in a different direction. But then now I will tell you, you don't live in a pristine system. Now this is my face being unhappy. This is my posture of unhappiness. You do not live in a pristine system. So what's supposed to happen is your proximity sensor is supposed to keep you away from the membrane of death by giving you a fear when you start to get close to a timeline or a thought structure that is going to make you die. And instead, what has happened is those fears have been placed often directly in front of your path of least likelihood, where you need to go in order to attain eternal life. And that is BS. That's not the original pristine system of the way that things are supposed to be. So just please know that when you feel fear in your life, in the way that the cosmos has been structured up until this point in your life experience, that fear often kept you away from the pathway to eternal life. Oftentimes you have to go directly through your fear in order to get to these levels of spiritual attainment, but that's not the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be you feel fear and you're like, fear, fear, fear. Don't go over there. Go over here instead, and go over here. And then you get the everything is fine feedback from the cosmos. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. And if you have those sensors actively calibrated in your life, then nobody dies. That is how you have the 1 in 10 to the 32nd trillionth exponent likelihood happen of entire planetary ascension and everybody avoiding the membrane of death and everybody achieving total coherence and longevity, because you actually have these sensors for reality accurately calibrated and accurately evidenced in the examples of your life. So yeah, you're living in a system that has become non-pristine, and what that means is that sometimes you receive fear signals. The fear signals say stay away, stay away, stay away, even when you're supposed to be going down that time road. And then sometimes you receive pleasure. You do not receive the proper signals of pleasure when you are on the right timeline that tells you that you're on the right timeline. Like you should receive a signal that says everything is okay, pleasure, 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 everything is cool, everything is great. But you don't always receive that. So yeah, when you receive random anxiety throughout your life, it's not because, oh, you're going to get hit by a truck or something like that. A lot of the time it's because fear is running rampant. It is off the rails. It is outside of its boundaries of the activity of why fear was created. Why was fear created in terms of reality structure and the enormous genius of the creation of time, the creation of awareness, and the creation of sentience? God is not some capricious loser or something that wants to just punish you or screw with you in some way. Not at all. So you must recognize that you're in a non-pristine system. It was created to function in a particular way, and it has been misappropriated. It has been distorted. It has been taken from its original purpose, and now it is very difficult to navigate accurately based upon those signals. So just know, in your life, you might receive a signal that says, fear, 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 don't go any further, certain death will happen, and you have to go through it anyway. And you're not going to have certain death. You're actually on exactly the right path. And you look at after that experience, you're like, why in the world did I have all those fear signals? Nothing bad happened. And the answer is because you're not in a pristine system. You're in a hacked system. And then you can also say, wow, when I was blah, 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 and I then almost hit the membrane of death and I almost went over a cliff, how come my sensor system didn't tell me to stay away? How come my inner guidance didn't tell me effectively that that was a crap time road and I shouldn't go down that road because I was going to go over a cliff and die if I aligned with those events or those decisions, if I made those decision vectors? And the answer is because those protective mechanisms and protective guidance systems were turned off. So a bunch of different things happened in the genetic modification of the human and the experience of having a chakra system. Fear was misappropriated and changed and recalibrated, and the everything is okay signal was also misappropriated and changed and recalibrated. And all of this, like if you have a rat that is going through a maze and you're like, I'm going to shock this rat when it does something good, then first of all, you're an effing psychopath. Like, that's disgusting. And some scientists would do something like that. But also you can think about what it would be like to be the rat. You're like, okay, I'm receiving the negative feedback. Don't go down that labyrinth that, of the maze. Don't go down that branching. But the scientist is like, zap, zap, zap. I'm going to see if you're going to go down that. You're like, I'm not going to go down there. I get zapped when I go down there. But that's exactly where you're supposed to go. That's where the food or the rest or the reward is, in the exact place where you're getting zapped. So yeah, that would be a psychopathic, sociopathic, non-healthy scientist that would create some kind of life labyrinth where you were navigating, but not according to accurate signals that would bring you towards eternal life. So in a lot of ways, you have to discount and override the signals. And then you know what it's like. You guys might have had this experience in your car. If you have a check engine light that comes on in your car. So for me, I have a jiggly wire that connects to some action of traction control on my brakes. And every time I turn on the car, the warning light comes on. And when I have passengers in my car, I always tell them, don't worry, my brakes are fine. It's been this way for 7 years. It's just an idiot light. It's just a jiggly wire. I had the brakes checked. They're totally fine. So it's an errant signal. So I'm sure every one of you has had the experience of either your own car or somebody else's, where you turn on the car and the check engine light comes on and it's like, oh, I don't have to check the engine. Everything is fine. But the light, the signal is wrong. So it's just hard to drive the car around when there's a flashing light the whole entire time saying like, watch out, watch out, watch out. So you have to kind of just tell yourself like, nope, that's not the check engine light. That's the everything is fine light. Everything is fine, everything is fine, everything is fine. But that's not how we're supposed to go through and experience our realities here. So let me now go back into pure abstraction. Pure abstraction as it relates to what these chakras are and what is happening and what is doing and where you're going. I can barely even speak here. So first of all, in the shape of the chakras, you have two basic types of energy. So if I draw, let me just get my pen going here. If I have, again, this is cross section. Wait, I can't even draw properly. Cross section here of one torus shape. Again, I can't even draw properly. I get so frustrated, guys. Help me. Okay. It's not a perfect torus, but you kind of get the idea. So one flavor of energy is the flavor of energy that is the energy that goes around in a circle. Comes out here from the source, goes around in a circle, and goes back to the source. Boom. That's one flavor of energy. One flavor of energy is the flavor of energy that goes straight. Let's choose a different color. That's this. That's the straight up and down energy from here to here. And then from here back to here. You couldn't even see that. Okay, so when, blah, blah, blah. These chakras do not exist in a contextless void. They exist in a matrix. A matrix is a crystalline matrix where things are tessellated or shoulder to shoulder. It is not a system of diminishment and imprisonment a la the Keanu Reeves movie, even though that's a brilliant science fiction movie. But it's become our shorthand, like escape the matrix, meaning there's something that is holding you back, when really it doesn't have to be something that's holding you back. It could be a very, very well-designed system. So what I just drew was a couple of different chakras stacked up together. First of all, they are stacked together in hyperspace, and I'm going to teach you a lot about hyperspace in this class. This big giant dot is the singularity at the center of one chakra. Here's singularity at the center of another chakra. Here's singularity at the center of another chakra, or time structure. It is all the same singularity. So please first internalize that. And then what I want you to see is, even though my drawing isn't perfect, all of these guys vector in perfect alignment. So an impulse that emerges from this singularity here and goes in this direction will come up here, it will meet this singularity here, and it will meet its complement that is coming from this direction, an arrow pointing downward. And these two energy fields, that are coming together like this, that are in perfect alignment, they will, here, hold on a second, I gotta admit someone to this meeting. You can see in my thumbnail, my hands coming together. They will come together, they will, the forces will meet each other perfectly, and then bounce in the opposite directions perfectly. So if I can probably just gesture for this so you can get a sense of what this is like. So in that larger structure of many multiple chakras all put together, the lines that are the straight lines, that are the lines of path of least likelihood, that is everything that you want to be aligning with as being an ascended being, those are the pathways that meet and converge with other paths of least likelihood. Meeting like this, meeting like this. These are like mirrors that are perfectly in alignment, and they bounce off signals off of each other perfectly. That is how lasers work. Lasers have an internal structure with a mirror here and a mirror here, and regular light waves that are not perfectly arranged go into the laser, and they bounce back and forth between these two mirrors. And as the light waves bounce back and forth, they get coherent. They get perfectly organized so that then it is just one arrangement of light in one direction. I have to mute you, not because I don't love you, but just it will help the sake of the quality of the, here we go, just muting everyone. So you become coherent like laser light. That is what happens in this larger matrix of reality as all organisms achieve, and I have to stand up and stretch also because now I'm making a promise to myself not to sit for too many hours at a time without stretching, to connect with these other aspects of yourself, because you're God, and I'm going to get into how to build the structure of the cosmos. You're God, and you're on a mission of rediscovering yourself and remembering yourself as God's self, as you're meeting all these other aspects of yourself that are also God, coming from different directions. So here's one impulse of God that is coming path of least likelihood through the chakra system in this way. And here's another impulse of God, and they align and they meet perfectly. They meet perfectly at singularity, and they complement each other in terms of their vectors of their forces, the amount of force that they carry in the direction that they are going, and then they immediately bounce back in the opposite direction, creating the complement vortex. So that is happening in this in this direction, and this in this direction. And that is what makes these four vortexes happen. You essentially have a big, giant array, if you don't like the word matrix, array of bubbles or spheres, and throughout those spheres you have all of these perfect straight line vectors that keep meeting and bouncing off of each other, and that is how you can have an infinite amount of energy and an infinite journey within a finite space. So here's one, I'll draw it for you. One traditionalist view of how to model infinity is to say that we're going to start with infinity would just get where's my pen? Infinity means here starting with a dot over here and then going infinitely in one direction. And I use this little figure 8 in order to represent infinity. That is one valid model of reality. But here's another valid model of reality where you have two boundaries, like two mirrors, and then you have an impulse. And the impulse starts here and it bounces over to here, and then it turns around and it bounces in the other direction. And there is no signal loss. And you have infinity in that system too. It's not going 10 million miles infinity. It can be infinity within 1 inch, within 1 centimeter, within 1 nanometer. It is infinity because of the bouncing back and forthness between these two boundaries and the non-entropy. Entropy means loss of signal. So whenever you have friction, that is entropy, that is loss of signal. When you have your chakras at an angle like this, that is when you get entropy or loss of signal. That is when you get death. So now you can begin to recalibrate your comprehension to say that death represents the friction and entropy of the larger system. You didn't do your math homework right. You didn't do your thought structures and your belief systems and your behaviors right. You hit the membrane of death. You were going at an angle, and within the larger system of consciousness as it's flowing through the tapestry of time in the cosmos, that represents entropy or a loss of signal. And this is also why your life really matters, because if you're having to do this vector complement thing, and you have to have these two things that meet perfectly, and let's say you were at an angle and you went like this and you hit the membrane of death, you're not there to hit this guy, because you're supposed to meet and then, I didn't have the words for it, meet and then reflect each other perfectly into the next genesis of reality structure. So this is reality, culmination, meeting perfectly, expansive genesis event into the next level of reality, or the next reality structure, the next stuff that's going to happen. So it's not an end. When you come to these culminations or return to infinity, it is not the end of your experience at all. It is the page break or pagination of one experience, but out of that coming togetherness is then the expansion into the next level of reality, which is, this is beautifully described, I think, in the Hindu tradition as like the great in-breath of the cosmos, and then the great out-breath, exhalation of the cosmos. And then at that exhalation, you then have the next in-breath, and then the next out-breath. So it is this constant reflection or oscillation or breathing, and what matters is accuracy. Because when they built the channel tunnel across the English Channel, they had the guys on the English side, the guys on the French side, and they were building this underground tunnel, and they had to calculate effectively so that way the tunnels actually met, because it wouldn't work very well if one guy was like 250 feet higher than the other guy and you kind of go to fit together. It's like, oh, sorry, your tunnel doesn't actually fit together. That is not what you want. So it's essential. This is why you care about other organisms and other people in their life trajectories. Your trajectory matters to me. That is also part of unity consciousness. It's like a baton in a relay race. If you are running with a team and you're standing there and you're ready to go, 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 and the person who is running their leg of the relay race doesn't get to you, you're like, I'm waiting for the baton. Where's the baton? Can't go. And similarly, if you don't make it in your relay race, you're like, I'm supposed to give the baton to someone, and you don't make it to where you're supposed to be, and they don't get that baton, then you have signal loss. You have a diminishment of the structure of the cosmos. So now you can come to understand, comprehend more the motivations for me as Aurora, a graduate, higher dimensional impulse on the network of stars, looking at the way that things were, I want to say the effed upness of the way that things are going on, and go, wait, that's a baton that got dropped, and that's a relay race that's not going to be won, and that's a channel tunnel that's not going to fit together, and then in this particular woman's life, and then if that time system doesn't get fixed or healed, kablooey, non-existence. You don't have enough of the structure of the fabric of space-time continuum to keep having a space-time sweater. And that's a big, big deal. So the cosmos augments itself by necessity in allowing or creating or generating the circumstances for rectification, items, events, people, structures, and behavior. And that's what Flying Rainbow Lasagna is. And thank you for being in this class, because even just learning about Flying Rainbow Lasagna, and then the potential for you to do that on a genetic level, allows for a restructuring of your life trajectory so that you're not going to be a mismatched tunnel. You will, in the relay race, meet perfectly with the level of consciousness that you're supposed to hand off to. And you will also reflect the energy that you contain perfectly to the other receivers, who will then receive that energy to them, so that they can then take that energy as an impulse and carry it onward in what they are doing. So sending and receiving energy impulses in order to maintain and sustain the fabric of reality creation. And I, even in my teaching from 10 years ago, make a good distinction between fabric of reality versus the space-time continuum as it is known in Earth's physics. So let's talk singularity. Singularity, as I define it, is slightly different than singularity the way that human science defines it, because I'm talking about this fabric of space and time and reality events being stretched to the infinity point, which is what you have here. Human science, objective materialist science, is basically physics is the exploration of the physical world. So when we have something like one of my rainbows here, these represent all the different layers of reality. The more subtle layers of reality, less dense, some of them purely energetic, and then physical reality being the realm of the five senses. The work of objective materialist scientists and the work that is known as physics strictly talks about and describes this layer of reality. You have optical light, electromagnetic spectrum, the things that can be perceived by your five senses, the things that can be measured by scientific instruments, physics of the physical world. When scientists talk about a black hole, and they talk about that is the place where the fabric of space-time continuum is stretched infinitely to the point that the laws of physics break down. The stretching of that fabric is not exactly the same as the stretching of this fabric. That fabric is a physical reality fabric. This fabric is not a physical reality fabric. It is time events. Time events are not a physicality that you can touch or sense. They exist in the realm known as hyperspace. So this exists in a box. This is time. So these, big teaching and back to my notes. These chakras or energy centers on your body represent time. And time is a set of possibilities and probabilities and event structures. And the formfulness that you see here in terms of the shape or the form of four vortices is created by nothing more than time whirling and swirling amidst itself. So in the same way, if you have a medium such as the atmosphere and it whirls and swirls enough, you get a tornado. If you have water and it whirls and swirls, you get a water spout. It's a medium, a fluid medium, that is then whirling in its own context that creates these structures. This is what is happening. This is time, and you have time whirling in these structures, creating these membranes and boundaries. But it's not like there's a wall. The membrane of death is not a wall. It is a differential that is made between time or different levels of reality that are moving at different rates, different time rates at different realities. So this is made 100% out of time. Hyperspace is the room that contains the room. Okay, so let's talk about this structure, first of all, containing time. My room that I'm in right now is the room of 319. I should draw this all out. The room of 319 is on a timeline. That's in my chakras. And where are my chakras located? Are they located in the room of 319? Are they located in the room of 320? Are they located in the room of 325? Are they located in the room of last week at 325? Are they located in the room of 25 million years in the future at 325? And the answer is My chakras are not located in the physical room, but they are located in the higher dimensional room that is known as hyperspace. That's what happens if you take this time structure and you put it in a room. I say hyperspace is the room that contains the room. A black hole would be considered a reality structure within one of these chakra systems. Let's just go to one of these things. So, just get a color. If this is a timeline and it's heading upwards here towards the membrane of death, and let's say that there's a star and the star is going to make a black hole, and it makes a black hole here, the black hole is located within this larger time structure. That is a super stretchy fabric, time-space fabric that makes a physical singularity, is located within the larger space-time continuum structure of the fabric of space-time. That's an important distinction to make. Let me go to the messages because I don't want to roll past too fast without getting to your questions. Okay, so this is a great question from Pedro, and thank you for being here. Beautiful returning student with great thoughts. Pedro says the ascension timeline is a straight line or a spiral. Dun dun! Okay, it's a beautiful question because I've been telling you that these are volumetric forms, but I'm showing you these cross sections and simplifying it. So in this map, every single one of these timelines that leads to the membrane of death is a spiral. So let's say we're working with the bottom quadrant here. I'm going to turn it face up. So now it looks kind of like a record, like an old-fashioned Led Zeppelin record. Spirals. All of these timelines spiral inward. This is the singularity, what you're heading for, the zeroth dimension. All of these are time spirals, except for the membrane ascension, except for the path of least likelihood. The path of least likelihood is the only one that is a straight line, like my pen, that goes up the center here and inward towards the center. So I initially said in the abstraction, the way that these reality structures are created, you have two different types of energy. One type of energy flows in circles. Here's a circle. Here's another circle. All right? Here's a circle. Here's another circle. But then one type of energy flows in straight lines. Here's a straight line. And the straight line energy flows to the singularity, but then it bounces off and it bounces back in this direction. So it comes up here, it gets to the center, it bounces, it meets its reflective opposite, and then it bounces back. And there's another chakra down here. I'll jump up and get my other sculpture, even though they're not calibrated to the same size, but you can get more of a sense of what I'm talking about. Bounces to the singularity at the center of here. So it bounces, I just can't effectively, these are very fragile and I don't want them to fall. There we go, that's a pretty good stacking, that looks pretty good. Comes from here, comes up the central core timeline, and then hits the center over here. And then bounces off of its reflection there, and then bounces back down here, and then bounces back up here. So that timeline, it's a great question, that is your ascension timeline. It's the only timeline that is not a spiral. And when you think about this in terms of efficiency of exploration of time, that means that it is the most efficient exploration of this time structure, because the spirals are all longer lines that have to go through lots of rigmarole in order to be able to get from point A to point B. But the path of least likelihood is the most efficient pathway from over here, down here, up the central core timeline, and then from over here, back here to here. It is the most efficient way to be able to connect singularity in those different aspects. So great question, and thank you for opening the door for me to talk about that more. Charlie B, and thank you for being here, says, how does one distinguish between fear, don't go there, versus avoiding undesired consequences, i.e. choosing to conform with social norms with which one disagrees? So, you know, there's a lot of stuff that's not calibrated properly in the world that we're currently experiencing, where if you follow your heart and your inner directive and your intuition that tells you whatever you do, don't do that thing because you're going to die, you're going to hit the membrane of death, but that might be the very thing that you might get paid for. Literally. You might be like, you know something, you can get paid however much money to be able to, whatever, be deep sea underwater welder on some kind of, oil pumping rig. They get paid a lot of money. Go underwater and weld stuff for, a big oil company. And it's like, okay, society will reward you for that, but you are technically going towards the membrane of death, endangering yourself and shortening your timeline by doing something that specifically leads you away from coherence and longevity. So society and many professions will literally pay you and reward you for doing things that make you go towards the membrane of death. And let me just mute you guys. And then so sometimes you will be rewarded by society for exploring things perilously close to the membrane of death. You earn a lot of money by doing that. And then sometimes you will also not receive fear signals that tell you that that's the wrong thing to do, because of course if you really had your information center accurate, you'd be like, I don't want to, it doesn't matter how many millions of dollars they'll pay me to be able to do this job. Like, I'm going to die underwater or something's going to blow up. And then what's the point of having money if you're going to die? So a lot of people would be like, no, thank you. I don't think I'll do that job. There are, my best answer to you is that it's very, very difficult to navigate this world based entirely upon these inner perceptions of signals, because you might be in very, very real conflict with what your intuition tells you versus what society will reward versus what you should be doing. And sometimes you get fear signals that come between you and your destination on a spiritual quest. So sometimes you're going in the direction of spirituality and of attainment, and like, there's your fear right in front of you. And you have to kind of just motor through it, even though that fear is not supposed to be there. That fear is actually an error in the programming of the cosmos, of the cosmic infrastructure. You're like, that fear is not supposed to be there, but I'm going to have to go through it anyway. So what it means is you kind of just like step on the gas, like step on the gas, squint, go. Even though all the signals are saying like, stop, whatever you do, don't go any further, and you do it anyway. And all of this is very, very poor training, because what it does is it trains your energy body to be like, when you hear signals that say stop, go. It's the opposite of what you should be doing. You should be training in order to say, when I feel fear, it means I shouldn't go in that direction. So here would be an example. If you think about something like, should I start that new business and start selling whatever is your dream to sell things? Whatever. Just stuff. Should I start selling stuff on my own business online? And if you feel fear, then what you should be is like, my intuition tells me I feel fear. I should stay away from that timeline. It's not the right timeline for me. How about I go over here and do this instead, right? But a lot of the times, and there's so many of these Instagram things that are about like, go through it, even if you feel afraid, because we have been calibrated. We're in this world that is falsely calibrated, so that you end up feeling fear even when it's your destiny and it's something you're supposed to do. You're supposed to start that business. And the fear that is there in front of you is an erroneous signal, because you're actually going to have a huge amount of uplift and positivity, and you're going to be there to hand off the baton to other aspects of your God self through doing that. And if you don't do that, then there's an empty space in the time field. So the fear is really just a way of knocking you off your cosmic purpose. And that's not what fear is supposed to do. So a lot of people think that fear is a muscle builder, a strength builder, where it's like, there's fear, but I'm going to punch through that membrane and I'm going to do it anyway. That's not what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be sensitive creatures that actually sense with our minds what's out there. What am I sensing? And if you sense something and you feel fear, just be like, pull back. I don't want to go in that direction. Go in this direction instead. And instead, we've been in this barbarian world where we've learned like, even when you feel fear, it tells you to stop going, keep going. And if you think about this, even though it's an indelicate, crude allegory, lovemaking. Like, you're lovemaking with the cosmos is your partner. And if your partner says like, ow, stop, you're hurting me, don't do it like that, not so hard, then you should listen. You should be like, oh, sorry, baby. Like, I didn't mean to give you too much tongue or whatever. Again, sorry to be like silly and indelicate about it, but that's what we're talking about. And instead, this whole entire system that we're submerged within in terms of reality and cosmic divine lovemaking and partnership teaches us when you feel fear and when your partner says, stop, it's too much, I don't like it, this hurts, to keep going anyway. Punch through membranes, keep going anyway. That is not what we're supposed to be learning. So you're loved in your error, but just please recognize that that's not what you're supposed to be learning here. You're supposed to be learning the ultimate sensitivity, partnership sensitivity. This is your crown over here that connects you to God. And God is like, yes, I have this whole big giant sensory organ that is called reality. I want you to go in this direction over here. And when you go in the right direction, what you're supposed to feel is pleasure and expansiveness. And it feels good to you, and it feels good to the time field itself and to God, the creator and experiencer of all of this. So there's very, very real problems, not only in the psychological distress that happens from misdirecting rats in the laboratory, going to zap you even when you're going in the right direction. That's a psychological distress and a torture for the rat, but it also becomes a distress mechanism for the larger time field, which then has a lot of people that have been calibrated within it to say, don't listen to the signals of your partner, keep going anyway. And that's not what we want to be learning as we are here in the school of life. So just be prepared to throw out a lot of the lessons that you learned and internalized here in the school of life as being erroneous, inapplicable, and non-transferable job skills when you get your real cosmic job. Because you're going to have to and want to be attentive to your partner and do things in the right way. You can think of it as a dance partner instead of a sex partner. Be like, nope, you don't want to step on your partner's toes. You want to dance in the right direction and in perfect alignment with all the other dancers, and that is what creates a positive, pleasant experience. So the non-pristine system is extremely distressing to me because I'm like very much like, these guys are learning it all wrong. And then when they graduate and get to the next level, they're going to dance all wrong. And that's also not positive for the entirety of the ship of consciousness to continue onward. So very good question. I hope that I spoke to that effectively, because if you want to know about like tips of the trade, like how do you keep going or how do you know which direction to go, then that's also a bit of a challenge, because if you're like, okay, I can't listen to the beep, beep, beep sensors telling me whether I'm going in the right direction, how in the world do I know which direction to go? The positive news is that you actually do receive some information and intuitive guidance from your peripheral selves. Again, every single aspect of these time vortex shapes is you. This is you. These are all different versions of you, of your day, of your life, of your year, of the events of your life that can possibly happen. And you talk to yourself. When you end up going out for, I always joke about this, you go out for milk for your coffee in the morning and you end up dead. You're like, got hit by a truck, you're dead, and this is you like spewed across the highway, and the last thought that you do, you kind of like say to your other self, like, don't be like me. You wake up in the morning on your other timeline, you're like, should I go out and get milk for coffee? Be like, no, I think I'll just have tea this morning. I think I'll just have something simple. That choice coming from the influence of the version of self that made a different choice and then had a mortality event happens quite a lot. And that you sometimes feel it directly, intellectually, sometimes you feel it intuitively. And I've even felt it in the sense of job opportunities. Many opportunities will be offered to you throughout your life, but not all of them are positive, life-affirming opportunities. So some guy might be like, hey kid, chomping my cigar. Hey kid, go out over here, dig a ditch, I'll give you $5. That's not necessarily a good job. So not everything is a good life opportunity for you to align with. And sometimes when I'm offered a particular opportunity that I'm like, oh yeah, sure, like I want money, and I think for 10 seconds, like what would it be like if I actually took that job? And then my tendril of attention goes down that timeline and I kind of feel and sense, and I'm like, no, that doesn't feel good at all. No, that's an energy draining, non-ideal life circumstance. So although you might earn physical dollars by going there, your energy body gets drained because it takes you away from eternal life and towards the membrane of death. So you can have a job on your ascension timeline, but it must be the job that is your cosmic job. And your cosmic job sometimes is working for a physical employer, but it sometimes is creating your own business or creating your own niche, because sometimes the society doesn't always have an edifice ready for you. Sometimes you have to make your own niche. So sometimes you can't expect that someone will come along and offer you, like, here's your ideal job on a platter, and that will lead you towards your ascension pathway. Sometimes you look at all the job listings and you're like, none of these seem like my ideal job, but I have to do my cosmic job. You create it, you make it, you create it in divine co-creative partnership. And that's why it's so essential to be attentive to your partner, and your partner is yourself on a higher dimensional level. I'm definitely going to get into, as I get through a few more questions, how to build reality structure, because this is the deep stuff. This is the deep, gooey middle that I really want to share with you today. Melissa says, so our chakras wibble wobbled about the same time the Earth's tilt happened? Yes. Which would have been sometime during and after the flood? Yes. Excellent thought structure there. And reality structures formed post-flood were ripe picking for diminishment and control by out-of-place energy entities, yes, the EUP, who gained control via frictionful thought structures, yes, such as deity worship, yes, deity worship, which is also a genetic implantation, sin and sacrifice, yes, which has taken humanity this long to rectify, and due to enlightenment, it seems the most perfect time to rectify our chakras wobble as well. So well said, so well said. I hug you in this class because I'm so pleased that you have this level of insight and perception. That's exactly what happened. Earth used to be at a very different orientation in space, and Earth has tilted in a wibble wobble in exactly the same way that human chakras have tilted in a wibble wobble. And that essentially our rectification and moving towards that perfect alignment, where when you live your life, you're living in conjunction with God's divine intelligence. Do that in your individual life. We do that as a mass cultural experience, and that the shape of the planet shape of the planet transforms, shape of the planetary architecture transforms, the shape of all events on our planet transform, and you hit the nail on the head. Frictionful thoughts, the out-of-place energy entities implanted their mind. OS human is not your natural thought structure, and they implanted that mind into your thought to create these frictions that then make your chakras wibble and wobble wildly out of control. So during your day, you might do the thought structure, thought watching activity, where you're like, I'm going to watch myself. I'm going to watch these thought structures. And then some thoughts come into you. And I feel it very much. Like here, like thought structure. I'm like, la, going along. Thought structure comes in. All of a sudden, I feel my chakra goes wibble wobbly. And I'm like, I don't like that at all. And sometimes it can be something very innocuous, like a chore that I have to get done. And I have many chores on my to-do list. But it's the sense of that something is taking me out of the moment now and putting me into a sensing of the anticipation of the future. And the way I get out of that, like going along, you have to do that, upload, chakra goes to the side. And what I think is this: I will do that upload, but I will think about it when it is relevant to that time. And my chakra goes back like this. Because the way that you stay in these alignment structures is to be in the present moment now. And another thing that can happen is I'm going along and I'm in a good chakra structure like this, and something makes me think, remember that thing that just happened? I'm going to make you feel bad about it. I go over to the side. And instead of even analyzing it or whatever, I just recognize any perception that I'm having about a previous experience through this moment now is going to be a distorted reality structure, so I'm choosing not to think about it through a distorted lens. And my energy goes back to being in alignment. You will, at a certain point, retrospect your life, but it doesn't have to be right this moment, definitely not through the dirty lens of what a lot of these interlopers and negative influencers would like you to experience. So Melissa also says, I look for breadcrumbs of genuine love to help me navigate fear and other foggy paths, clues that I as higher self leave for me. So beautifully well said. And yes, it's a good description, and I know someone else used to talk about that too. We leave for ourselves breadcrumbs on the trail of attainment. They are breadcrumbs from within this life. They can also be from within other incarnations or multiple parallel selves. So these can sometimes be art or music from aspects of self that you don't even identify with as self. It could be like a song that John Lennon wrote a song and you listen to it. You're like, I'm so inspired by that. But the truth is, you're that person. You wrote that song. You wrote it for yourself to hear it in this moment. Or a poem from Emily Dickinson. You actually wrote that poem for yourself to hear it in that moment. But that's, I know, getting a little bit abstruse in terms of reality structure and who you identify with as self. But just know that you leave breadcrumb trails for yourself. You're God. You're here on the journey of remembrance of God's self, and you have left many, many, many clues to sustain and guide yourself, even within a non-pristine system. God is supreme. Like, cheers, I'll drink to that. God is supreme. And that means that even if you are a rat that is placed within a labyrinth where you get zapped negatively for doing the right thing and thinking the right thing, you're still going to make it back to God, because God is supreme, because your success is inevitable, because there's no way to distress or unbake the truthful nature of who and what you are. It is woven into on such a deep, profound level. There's no way to take that out of there. So there will always be some way, even within a non-truthful system, for truth to speak to you. Even through a non-truthful system, even if you're a rat getting zapped in the wrong system, or if you're in a false light system, or if you're looking at stuff on a computer that's a distorted, limited version of reality. Divine intelligence is supreme, and that means that it comes through every layer and level of reality in spite of these distortions. It's an amazingly strong fail-safe mechanism that means all of us are going to make it home. All of us are going to make it home, even if there's some attempt to disrupt or subvert your perception. Let me go into, from my notes, this is the most important thing that I wanted to share from lesson 2. Literally, maybe I will do a whole thing, a teaching for next week all about the rest of lesson 2. But this is the most important stuff, beginning with the zeroth dimension. This is how we build the dimensions. This part of my teaching is the thing that is the most analogous to what would be called sacred geometry. Even though this is my rant once per semester, the word geometry literally means geo and metric, measuring the earth. It is not an adequate word to describe the language of higher dimensional harmonics that I am sharing with you here. The higher dimensional math that I share with you is a visual or perceptive type of math. It doesn't come in a linear equation of Arabic numerals, and it is just collecting my thoughts for a moment, beyond the measurement of physical structures. So when people talk about sacred geometry, they go a lot into the things like we were talking about, like the Merkaba, Flower of Life, quote unquote, Daisy of Death, a lot of these other things that have to do with descriptors of how there are number systems that influence or can be evidenced in physicalities, like the swirl at the center of a sunflower, or the bone structure of your body, or the bone structure of a nautilus shell in the ocean. And these are very, very accurate and apt truths. However, what I am talking about with this information that I share with you is, or are, the math, the proportion and shape, vectors and polygons that describe higher dimensional truth. So geometry and geometric literally came from the ancient flooding of the Nile, and the high culture in Egypt and areas of the Middle East is absolutely an outgrowth, vestigial outgrowth of the remaining traces of some of the inhabitants of Atlantis. Created a high culture over there in Egypt, and a lot of what they maintained and believed in and taught to one another were traces of truth, but not the entire puzzle piece, but they had many, many puzzle pieces of truth. And part of what they did was they, of course, had agriculture along the banks of the Nile. The Nile was one of their main sources of water for agriculture. It was reliable. There was a very reliable annual flooding of the Nile, that they would draw their farmland boundaries, and then every year the banks of the river would get wider and erase their boundaries, and then they'd have to redraw them. And that's literally what the practice of geometry, earth measuring, came about, so that you could accurately reestablish, where is my farmland supposed to be? Where's your farmland supposed to be? How much corn or barley am I going to grow? And how much corn and barley are you going to get out of this field? That is geometry. And so geometry, as it relates to like the flower of life and other things like that, that's structuring physical structures of your cells, or structuring water molecules or something like that. Those are all accurate aspects of the world that are being structured and that are influencing your life, but that's just one slice of the frequency pie, not the entirety of what you're experiencing. So just like we are moving beyond the experience of perception of and limitation of perceiving optical light, and we're moving into perceiving with your inner eye light that is the pure light of awareness, non-optical light that is just the abstraction of data and intelligence and organizational principle. We're moving beyond something that would be called sacred geometry. It's not just about measuring earth or measuring physicality. So I call this the higher dimensional language of harmonics, which includes color, line, shape, form, movement, texture, and tone being musical tone. Got it? So that is a much more accurate description of what we are doing. But what I relate to in terms of sacred geometry is the sense of a personification of numbers and motivation, that numbers are doing stuff for a reason and that it tells a story. That part is accurate. So as I'm telling you this story about the genesis of dimensionality, how to build the cosmos from these dimensions, from the simplest, not simplest, from, I should say, the most foundational to the greatest level of complexity, then you will learn about the journey of consciousness and relate it to your own consciousness, because this is your journey of consciousness as you are creating these complex dimensionality structures. I know that that was a lot of words, but it's going to get there. This dot that I just drew is the zeroth dimension. And it is the zeroth dimension. It is also infinity. It is also singularity, or the singularity, or the singularity point. So it is called the zeroth dimension because it contains everything. So that might seem counterintuitive, and I emphasize this a lot in this class, because in this commodification culture, if something is zero, if it has no value, then you think it is worthless. It's worth $0. It's worthless. I'm getting zero for this. If I put a price tag of zero on something and sell it, I get $0. It's a very linear, very commodification-based approach to reality. But in this highest dimensional math substrate, the zeroth dimension is the most. It is everythingness. It is literally infinity. Yeah, I didn't say the simplest. I said the most foundational. It is not the simplest place in reality structure at all. It is actually one of the most complex places that you will ever know about or attempt to perceive. And if you ever have insomnia or just want to think about something cool late at night when you can't fall asleep, think about singularity. Singularity is the zeroth dimension. It is, in this case, the truthfulness of what I'm sharing with you, the infinite stretchiness of this fabric of pure abstract time. This is different than the stretchiness of the fabric of the space-time continuum as it is described in the world of objective materialist science and what the physics of what physicists in your universities study. That they study the laws of physics, the laws of nature, the laws of matter, the stuff you can sense with your five senses. But there is a stretchiness of that fabric at the center of a black hole. That is the breakdown of the rules and equations that represent physical sciences. But this zeroth dimension that I'm talking to you about is an abstract empiricism. That is the stretchiness of the fabric of reality, the fabric of time itself, the fabric of abstract possibilities and probabilities as they can exist in time. It is the infinite stretchiness of that fabric. So when you look at one of these time structures and you see the vortexes converge at the center there, what you're looking at something is not the same as, it is analogous to, but not exactly the same as the gravitational feature that is, let's say, at the center of a black hole. Because you know something? You have singularity at your center, but you are not necessarily a gravitational vortex that draws everything in. Boom. You know, like a black hole is a gravitational vortex that draws everything in. That has singularity at its center. You have multiple singularities or doorways to singularity inside of you, but that does not mean that you are this supermassive gravitational object. It does mean that you have these time features that represent the stretchiness of the fabric of time stretched to infinity. What is infinity? Infinity is the overlappingness of every single possibility and probability that could ever possibly happen. Everything that can happen is happening at that point, and there's only that point. So if I scribble in a different color, hold on a second, I'll get a different color. If I scribble around here in yellow, where I'm scribbling in yellow, none of this exists. In the zeroth dimension and in the building of the fabric of reality, none of this exists. All that exists is this one little point, an object not drawn to scale. It is literally the smallest point that you can possibly make or draw or envision. And everything is there. Everything overlaps there. And that is a feature that does not dissolve even as dimensionality grows and expands in complexity or is augmented around that originality point. That originality point remains, and it also becomes the destination. So it is zero because in this world of higher dimensional math, it does not require any amount of information to describe the presence of a point or an aspect of consciousness in or on the zeroth dimension or that infinity point, because everything is there. Literally every atom, every photon, every subatomic particle, every vector, every force, all energy, anyone who has ever lived, any version of you that has ever lived, every version of reality, all exists in that same place, overlapping and converging. It's, again, something to think about for late at night, almost more than you can possibly encompass while you're in a human neurological vessel with the limitations that you have. Very, very incredibly profound thing. And when I talk about the sacred geometry parallels to what I'm teaching here, this is the parallel. That at some point in the story, the zeroth dimension, which is you, which is a sentient being, had to have the thought, I know that I'm everything, and I know that everything is contained within me, and that I'm the only place that exists. But what would happen if there was a little piece of me that wasn't here with me in this time place, and instead was someplace else at a different time? That is the most significant cognitive leap or cognitive event that can happen, and it happens over and over and over, and it happens continually, and it's a miracle. It is a miracle, and it is all about the expansion of the zeroth dimension and why God is having these experiences. So at a certain point, God had to think, what if there is a little piece of me that instead of being here with me is over here? And as soon as that thought happened, that was supposed to be a dot, as soon as that thought happened, that was the invention of the first dimension. Oops, now I made a dot. Because what that meant was you have the zeroth dimension here, you have a destination over here, and then you have a series of dots that connect together the origin and the destination. And this is also known as a line or a number line. So this is called, let's just use a different color. This is called the first dimension. And it is a one-dimensional object because it only requires one piece of information to describe the position of a point on that line. You're like, Aurora, this sounds a lot like math. I'm having bad flashbacks to third grade. Somebody hold me, I'm rocking back and forth. Don't worry, you're safe. You're safe. You're safe. This is exactly like a number line where you have 0 to 1 or 0 to 1 million. And then you have each dot representing an integer or a number on that number line. And the number can be 1 or 2 or 3. And these all represent positions on that number line. But you only have to have one number because there's only that one space, that there's only that number line. There's no space around that number line. So now, wait. Well, now scribble like a child. There's nothing here. There's nothing here that hasn't been invented yet. There's nothing here that hasn't been invented yet. So all that there exists is the zeroth dimension and that line, and one piece of information is required in order to represent the position of something on that line. So that initial leap is the greatest leap. the leap at 90 degrees. It's a 90-degree angle from any direction. It could be in this direction. It could be in this direction. It could be, in this direction. Any of those directions would be appropriate outward from the zeroth dimension. Once you have made this leap in this direction and you've created the first dimension, then every single subsequent dimension is created as a leap at 90-degree angles or perpendicular to that initial dimension. So what is perpendicular to the first dimension? This is like we've created a line, and the answer is we move in this direction over here, and I'll make this little shape here, meaning 90-degree angles, and what that equates to is we line up many, many, many lines next to each other. Here's another line. Here's another line. Here's another line. Remember, there wasn't anything here except for yellow scribble. Now we're making leaps into the next perpendicular dimension, and what I'm creating is a plane. This is meant to represent a plane, even though the magic of perspective, you're just going to look at it as if it is a flat square. But that is the second dimension. Wait, and let me draw this a little bit better, because now it's going to look like a plane. The miracle of perspective, with all these lines that go like this, right? All right, all lined up, if I drew it better, parallel to one another. So let's get a different color. Oops, not that, different color. So let's call that the second dimension. And it is the second dimension because it requires two pieces of information to describe the position of a point on that line. We need to have the X version of information and the Y version of information. Two pieces of information. So it's slightly more developed in how you have to describe reality position there. Right now we're still doing spatial dimensions. We're not yet into time-based dimensions. And then what is perpendicular to the second dimension? Now you guys all have a great facility with this because you occupy the third dimension. It is upward in this direction. So if a flat plane is like a piece of paper or a playing card, then a third dimension or perpendicular jump to the second dimension would be arranging many multiple planes on top of each other. So there's a plane, here's another plane. These are not drawn perfectly, it's a bit hasty, and another plane, and what that ends up making is a box. Let's draw a big fat three-dimensional box. Here's the box. That's like if you stacked up many playing cards, or if you stacked up many pieces of paper, or you stacked up anything that was many, many flat sheets of something. That gives you the third dimension. And it is the third dimension because it requires three pieces of information to describe the position of a point within what is now that box, not a flat plane. You got to have your X, you got to have your Y, and you got to have your Z. You can't even see that Z. Make a Z you can see. Z. Three pieces of information. Those are the three spatial dimensions. First dimension, second dimension, third dimension. Now you and I are not just third dimensional beings. We are third dimensional beings. I'm sitting in a box just like you are, mostly in a room, but we move through time. Now we get to the deep stuff. So first I'm just going to teach you a little bit of shorthand. This is the third dimensional box of reality that represents one moment in time. And the first time over here, I'm going to draw it as a box, but to save time in this diagramming, then I'm just going to draw everything else as squares. But think of them as boxes, okay? I'm asking you to do a lot of mental effort here. It looks like a square, but it's actually a box because this is just going to take a long time otherwise. So we started this class at 2 p.m. This is the box of 2 p.m. It's so painful to write with these pens. To really concentrate. That's the box of 2 p.m. Let's even draw a little tiny stick figure of you that represents you and your body and your cellular structure at 2 p.m. Here's your head, body, legs, and arms. It's my famous stick figure. That's you at 2 p.m. when we started this class. But now it is 3:59 p.m. You are not still in this box. You are not still in that body. You have literally moved through time. Each one of these boxes is a discrete moment in time. And instead of drawing a whole stick figure, I'm just drawing the little circle to represent the stick figure. But each discrete moment in time has a body, a tiny version of you within each one of these moments of time. And it, again, is you. These are not mere abstractions. When you think about a timeline and you think about a death and you think about the shape of time, you're really thinking about many, 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 many little stick figures of you, versions of you in different reality contexts. I'm telling you this because I want you to care. I don't want you to think about it as just a sense of numbers. Like, oh, who cares? 3 plus 5 equals 8. Do this and you hit the membrane of death. These are very, very real experienced deaths by very, very real little versions of yourself. So we began class at 2 p.m. and then what happened was, through the activity of your DNA, because the dancing, moving, gushing, flowing, knitting, unknitting, crocheting, floriferous activities and dance movements of your DNA is what propels your consciousness or your awareness through time. So I'm going to just choose an awareness color. Awareness color is going to be purple, big fat purple line. This is the dot, your purple dot of awareness. Here's a purple dot of awareness in that body. Let's make it bigger. Can I make it bigger? That's as big as it gets. That's as good as it gets, guys. Okay, purple dot of awareness, and it jumps due to the movement of your DNA. Bounce through time. 201, 202, 203, 204, 205, blah, 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 moving forward to 401. You're now here at this moment in time. That's 4 p.m. You literally jumped timelines, not timelines, but time moments. You jumped because each one of these is a discrete moment or a train car of reality that is separated at the Planck length. And the Planck length is considered to be the smallest unit of measurement that you can measure reality structure with and still call it reality. So if we were to chop a piece of cake into a smaller piece and then subdivide that piece and subdivide that piece and subdivide that piece until it's a tiny crumb, and then I cut that crumb into the smallest slice I possibly can cut it into and still have it be molecularly recognizable as cake, that is what the Planck length is. And I was joking, it is something like 10 to the negative 32nd exponent. It is a tiny, tiny, tiny size, smaller than a proton, which is a particle in the nucleus of an atom. It's a very, 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 very tiny increment, okay? So each minute would be considered to be subdivided into many, many, many tiny little discrete moments of time. You could think of them as train cars of a larger time structure. And it is the action of your DNA with its dance, with its gushingness, that makes you bounce, boom, into here, boom, into here, boom, into here. So as I'm talking to you, we just moved from 401 to 402. You didn't have to be like, okay guys, ready? I'm looking at my watch, ready, jump! Now jump into the next body. You don't have to do that. You have what is experienced from the first person experience, a seamless flow between each moment, where you are just seamlessly flowing from the experience of 401 to the experience of 402. So you don't require the conscious effort and volition to do this bouncing, but this bouncing represents what it is to be alive. So when you're in the time vortex, and here's the time vortex, right? And you're on a timeline here, and you're moving upward in this direction, this is how the upward movement happens. How does this upward movement happen? How do you flow through time? And the answer is, it is due to the dance of your DNA. You are literally propelled through time. And this is the fourth dimension. The fourth dimension, now I'm switching to a fourth dimension color, is a timeline. Beginning at here, the beginning, and moving in this direction over here. And then there's the end. Fourth dimension is a timeline. Now this timeline is directly analogous to this initial first dimension of how we built space. A one-dimensional line requires one piece of information in order to describe the position of a number on that line. And a fourth dimensional timeline requires one piece of information to describe and determine what is the position of where you are on your timeline. One piece of information, are you here at 2 p.m.? One piece of information, are you here at 4 p.m.? One piece of information. Now I'm going to be hard. I'm going to say, what is perpendicular to a line? Because remember, we created this plane by going perpendicular to the line. You're familiar with spatial dimensions, but how about time dimensions? This would be a perpendicular jump from your timeline, and what we would experience then would be a time plane. So now I'm going to draw it for you. Time plane would be many, many, many multiple timelines lined up next to each other like this. Many different versions of reality. In this version of reality, on this timeline over here, you got up in the morning, made your breakfast, blah, blah, blah. On this version of reality over here, you got up in the morning and you didn't make breakfast. You decided to, run outside and, whatever, jump in a lake. And on this timeline over here, you bought a ticket and you flew to Patagonia. Very, very different versions of reality structure, but all representing potentials in reality. That is the fifth dimension. But now we have to get to the point where I recognize and acknowledge you as being very, very intelligent students. This is not a direct analogy, because I don't want you to think that the fifth dimension is a literal time plane where you can look at and see all of these event structures created, kind of like a book with pages, and all of these narratives are written there like a timeline or a story. The fifth dimension, and let's call it, let's get a good color for us here, 5D. Because everybody in the New Age community is talking about 5D, and sometimes it makes me a little bit perturbed. 5D in the fifth dimension is actually a world of pure potential of uncollapsed waveforms. So this is a train car of reality. That's a box you can step into. That's a box you can step into. The fifth dimension, although it contains the fourth dimension and these very concrete reality structures that you can bounce into, actually creates waveforms. It actually is the container of many, many multiple, these are waveforms of potentials. And now we're getting into what humans call quantum and quantum observership, the double slit experiment, and everything that is about the uncollapsed waveform realities of the potentials of life experience. That fifth dimension and higher is not a series of timelines that you can look at and say, like, imagine if you could look at them with a telescope or a microscope and be like, there's that little tiny stick figure of me doing stuff. Fourth dimension, yes. But once you get higher than the fourth dimension, what you are looking at is a series of uncollapsed waveforms. So my best analogy is, if the fourth dimension is like a French bread, a long skinny piece of bread, and one end of bread is your birth and one end of bread is your death, and then when you cut the bread in the middle, the tasty bruschetta where you put your toppings, is each moment of your life. The fifth dimension is not the shelf where you have many, many French breads lined up next to each other. The fifth dimension is actually the bakery where you bake the bread of reality. So the fifth dimension is the bakery where you've got a big giant mixing machine, flour, water, yeast, and other flavorings, and the ovens that bake the dough of potential into the physical experience of slices of bread that are the fourth dimensional discrete reality moments. So the fifth dimension is a place of waveform potential. So everyone, this is why I have real issues. I have real issues here. Everyone's like, the fifth dimension, I'm entering the fifth dimension, I'm here, I'm in the fifth dimension, I'm ascending. I have issues because the fifth dimension is a world of pure potential. It is not just a world of elation or expanded reality structures or feeling like, hooray, I'm having a fun time, which is how a lot of people seem to equate it. Like, hooray, I'm in a level of new freedom. I'm in the fifth dimension. No, you're already in the fifth dimension. You have been this whole entire time, and you are exploring your journey of recognizing that you have energy apparatuses and anatomy in the fifth dimension. The fifth dimension is a realm of pure potential, of uncollapsed waveforms, of stuff that isn't stuff yet. When you look at this wall, your observership, which is the ovens in front of your eyes, takes the dough of reality and bakes it into a physical experience that says there's a wall there, or Aurora, there's a person here, or a tree, or whatever you're looking at. Before you look at it, there's not a thing there. There's just the potential for the thing to be there. Hold on one second. I just have to close my doors. I'm just going to pause this for 1 second. Just pause. The fifth dimension is a place of pure potential. That is a potential for reality structures, but it is not a series of little tiny rooms, like little tiny dioramas that have little tiny versions of you inside of there with different events happening to them, okay? It is uncollapsed waveforms. And then I joke about this. You have observership, you have your eyes, your perception, ovens in front of your eyes, and everywhere you look around at the world of pure potential, that's all of these uncollapsed waveforms, you bake that dough into bread with the ovens in front of your eyes. You are creating that wall behind me with your perception. You are creating the potential of whatever you're looking at, a flower, a tree, out of the world of pure potential with your observership. This is part of the miracle of what you are experiencing. You are God expanding into these different reality structures, and you are also Godding as you are creating physical embodiment structures that you can experience through your observership. So the fifth dimension is one of these critical infrastructure places in terms of reality perception and creation, where you're taking stuff that is the potential or the recipes or the building blocks for stuff and turning it into actual stuff. You're turning something that is a pure waveform of pure energy and pure thought form into an actual train car of reality that you can inhabit. Magical things happen there. But this is not a smoothie shop. This is not just like, hooray, I feel elated, let's go get a smoothie, which is how a lot of people talk about 5D. They're like, we're entering into 5D and blah, blah. And I get very frustrated because I'm like, if you entered into 5D, then you would be a pure waveform of potential. You would not actually, there would not be smoothie shops, but there would be the potential for smoothie shop. There, if you really entered into the 5D smoothie shop, you would enter into a place where there is the potential for big giant blenders and giant piles of mango and papaya and all sorts of different flavors, but none of it actually exists as stuff yet, but it has the potential to be blended together and made into an actual smoothie that you could exist. But that waveform potential would have to be translated into an actual fourth dimensional time structure that you could then inhabit and experience with your physicality structure and your body of the five senses, and actually drink a smoothie and taste what the papaya smoothie actually tastes like. This really matters, because this whole 5D thing, I think, has been used as, again, a consciousness diminishment structure instead of a consciousness expansion structure, which is what it should be. The loose language and generalizations that are being used in terms of talking about 5D and higher dimensional reality, you should know the exactitude of the math and the proportions of what you're doing, as opposed to approximations of the strudel recipe. It is as damaging or as corrosive as only receiving a certain amount of information about the flower of life and not being able to know the true information about the flower of life, so that way you can't really accurately and intentfully create structure and generate reality. And you want to be able to intentionally create a structure and a blueprint of reality and then make that reality. So you've been in 5D for a long amount of time. The only issue is you have been non-intentionally or unwittingly occupying and interacting with 5D, the bakery of the cosmos, and baking cookies that are not things that you necessarily want to inhabit. And I have a whole teaching about this from, I think, maybe back in 2017 or so. It's on YouTube and it's worth checking out. The burnt cookies of reality. And I talk about the ovens in front of your eyes and cooking the dough of reality with your observership. But the real problem is humans have been experiencing time according to the clock, especially for the past over 100 years, since timepieces were largely invented and disseminated to the human population. You have been experiencing time as something that is objective, not subjective, meaning, like, you guys know this. Time flies when you're having fun. When you're having fun, time flows at a different rate. You're like, I'm feeling fun and comfortable. blah, blah, blah. This seems to go so fast, but it could last forever. That's a subjective experience of the flow of the rate of time. Similarly, if you're being tortured, if you're having a root canal, like, this is taking forever. Or this is me on these different phone prompts calling people. If you want 1, press this. If you want 2, press this. If you want 3, press this. And I'm like, this is taking forever. So you know what I'm talking about. That feeling of frustration or ennui. When something is very unpleasant to have to experience. These are subjective experiences of the rate of the flow of time. The clock on the wall or the clock on your watch on your wrist tells you, no, 5 minutes have gone by or 10 seconds have gone by. But those are different measurement systems than the measurement system of your actual cognitive ability and your actual connection to the time field, which is truthful. So we've actually been experiencing a completely different level of reality every day in the clock measurement. It might say 24 hours have gone by, but you've actually been experiencing millions of years in the past couple of days because it's been an asymptotic curve moving towards ascension, where you will essentially get to the zeroth dimension, where you'll be accelerated to infinity, where you will experience infinite amount of time in one increment of time. You'll experience infinity within in infinity on the clock. But at a certain point, you're going to get to be like, within 1 minute, you experience 10 million, billion years. But it is a subjective rate of time that does not match with the information that is on the clock. It's not part of my original notes, but you just need to know that that's what's going on in terms of time acceleration or time dilation as you're moving faster and getting more towards the speed of light. So you've already been unconsciously or in a non-aware state interacting with the fifth dimension, where you take waveforms of potential and through your observership and what you believe to be truthful and possible about the nature of reality, you have been creating reality structures, then inhabiting those reality structures from 2 p.m. to 4:18 p.m. or however long the time has been going. And that's aspect of empowerment. If you can consciously know that you are within a sea of waveform potentials and that you're creating your future, you can create a much better future. So the cookies of reality were burnt simply because you could not control the heat from the ovens in front of your eyes. That some things you linger over. You want them to last for a longer amount of time. You want to add more observership to those things. And some things you don't want to cook for very long at all. You're like, I don't even want to put a lot of mental energy, effort, or observership into those reality structures that I don't really want to create. I don't really want to bake that bread. So you have to be able to regulate the subjective quote-unquote temperature of your attention and your observership as it creates reality structure. So that is what the fifth dimension actually is. And if you know what the fifth dimension actually is, then you actually have a chance to create the most expansive reality structures. You're like, I'm going to get the raw materials of reality. I'm going to get some raw waveform energy. I'm going to collapse it into reality structures. I'm going to experience those reality structures. That's what I want for you. That's what God wants for you. But of course, there's like, that whatever. There's many different reality and consciousness diminishment structures. They're like, no, I don't want you to do that. I want you to stay like a baby in your high chair. Don't get too forward and think that you're going to actually create your own life. Oh, I laugh. You create your own life? No, we're going to create your life for you. Like, sit down, shut up, kid, eat your Cheerios. And that's not what we want to have happen. And that's why I think 5D has been misrepresented, has been dumbed down and simplified and misrepresented in so many different ways that it is making it so that you're not getting the full empowerment teaching. And I'm giving you the full empowerment teaching. I know there's a good question over here. I'm going to hit that get to that rather in a few moments. But first, let me just complete this thought structure, because we got from the zeroth dimension up to the fifth dimension. And the fifth dimension is a waveform reality. Again, similar to what's going on in the double slit experiment, which humans know from the physical realm of how light acts before it is observed. Before it is observed in the double slit experiment, the light occupies both position A and position B. It's a waveform. You don't know if it's gone through slit A or slit B. But when you observe it, then you find out it went through either one reality or another, because the act of observing it bakes those reality breads into existence and makes it so that you then occupy one of those realities of the breads that you have baked. So, in allegory and loosely, you comprehend that you start off with a fourth dimensional timeline and it becomes a fifth dimensional time plane. Also, none of these are squares, all of these are spheres. All of these are spheres that line up to become these vortex shapes, but I'm drawing it as if these are planes and lines so that you can comprehend it more easily. But I'm asking you to add a lot of layers of your own comprehension to this. What would be perpendicular to a fifth dimensional time plane? And so the answer to that is, just grab a different color here. We're stacking up playing cards again. So we would stack up many, many, many time planes of waveform pure potentiality, and that is what would create the sixth dimensional time cube. So now I'm going to draw a sixth dimensional time cube. So the waveforms of reality that are represented by the fifth dimension, that was too long, actually do have a commonality to, let's say, fabric or a tapestry, time tapestry, because there's the warp and the weft, the complex interlocking of threads that make a grid-like integrity structure, over, under, over, under. You have these complementary waveforms that go at different angles and create a structural integrity to time. And I talk about my personal journey of coming here as flying rainbow lasagna. If I did not, it would be like a moth-eaten sweater. If you eat enough of the threads of time, that hole increases, and then your whole entire sweater disintegrates because it doesn't have structural integrity. So when you get to the level of 5D and beyond, you have waveforms that have formfulness. They're not random or arbitrary. They have formfulness, and their formfulness has a structural integrity. And if you don't follow that structural integrity, then your sweater of reality falls apart. So the time cube, that is the sixth dimensional time cube, is made up of many multiple 5D flat planes stacked up together until you get a sixth dimensional time cube. And that there are the potentials for time events within that time cube. And it takes 6 pieces of information to be able to describe a position for those potentials of time events. And then that cube becomes analogous to, again, this zeroth dimension of the initial point that is the starting point for the next genesis of reality. So the 6th dimensional time cube is there. And then now I'm just going to draw little boxes. But remember, each one of these squares is a box, and boxes in a line, and every single one of these is connected together, dot, 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 like dot, 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 dot. These are all connected together, and that creates a 7th dimensional timeline that is made up of 6th dimensional time cubes. So the dots of the 7th dimension are made up of time cubes, and the time cubes are made up of time planes, and the time planes are made up of timelines, and the timelines are made up of and contain little tiny boxes that are each discrete third dimensional moments containing little tiny stick figures of you. So every single one of these waveforms that you're dealing with over here technically contains and pertains to your physicality structure and little old you in different circumstances. It can be circumstances as like nice as being snuggled in your pajamas and being very happy and comfortable, or as not nice as being smeared across the highway because you got smashed by a Mack truck because you went out to buy some coconut milk for your coffee in the morning. These are more than mere abstractions. That's what I'm trying to say. The 7th dimension represents a time line made up of time cubes. And then what is parallel to the 7th dimension? Sorry, I didn't mean parallel. I meant perpendicular. Perpendicular to the 7th dimension, if I grab a different color, it's going to be going in this direction. And that is the 8th dimension. And the 8th dimension is what would happen if you made many, many, many timelines made up of time cubes. So I drew them as lines, but you know that they're all made up of cubes. and that's the 8th dimension. And you end up getting a time plane that is made up of time cubes, and then that time plane that is made up of time cubes gets made into a time cube that is a 3rd dimensional box made up of many, many, many time planes that are made up of time cubes. So you get an even larger cube that is made up of these many, many, many flat planes. That is the 9th dimension. And that 9th dimension then becomes the starting point, or the genesis, just like this. I don't know if you can even see it on the drawing here. I'm trying to emphasize it big. That original 0th dimension, this 9th dimensional time cube of incredible complexity, then becomes the starting point for the next line, which would be the 10th dimension of many, many, many multiple time cubes that are made out of time planes, that are made out of time lines, that are made out of time cubes, that are made out of time planes, that are made out of time lines, that are made out of 3-dimensional boxes. So if I make these various different squares over here, you recognize that each one of those is a cube, and that all relates to a time cube timeline going off in this direction, and that is what the 10th dimension is. It's a timeline made out of these time cubes that are made out of time planes, that are made out of time cubes, that are made out of time lines, that are made out of time cubes, that are made out of time lines, that are made out of individual discrete moments in the 3rd dimension cubes that you inhabit. And then the timeline, that is the 10th dimension. I know this is a lot. I'm sorry, I have to go back because I lost my annotation. So hold on a second, I'll go back and finish it. 11th dimension, oh, this is what happens because I moved this out of the way. The 11th dimension is going to be perpendicular to that timeline, which you can have many, many, many timelines that are made up of time cubes, that are made up of time planes, that are made up of time cubes, that are made up of timelines, that are made up of time cubes, that are made up of 3rd-dimensional cubes that go in this direction, and the 11th dimension would then be a flat plane structure that is made up of these 10th dimensional time cube structures. I know I could actually tell at a certain point in sharing this expanding in complexity teaching with you, at a certain point you just get like this, it's like it gets to be so complex that I know at a certain point it's almost too complex for the human neurology to encompass. But that is the story of how dimensionality is created. That is the story of God consciousness journey coming into reality creation mechanism. And the story of how this chakra shape is created is also analogous to how those dimensions are created. You have the beginning of the 0th dimension here. You have energy that is emanated outward to this level over here, and then that becomes your physicality presence. You start off as pure energy, pure waveform, the pure potential of consciousness, and then you emanate. And as you emanate, you become coalesced as physical matter. And this pertains to your journey of spiritual perception and attainment, because at a certain point, you will return to non-physicality or light speed or ephemeral nature or being pure light again. You will translate from being a physicality presence back into being a non-physicality presence. And that is part of the infinite journey of reflection between two finite boundaries. And that is also part of this journey of what it is to become enlightened, or to ascend, or to attain spiritual enlightenment. That these are, you're perfectly fine as you are. You are supposed to come here and get dense, be physical matter. But then you're not supposed to stay physical matter. That's only a part of your journey of the pathway of light. You're also supposed to transcend physical matter and return to being light speed, which is not just fast as it might be it looked at and thought about, like as fast as a jet plane or something like that. Not just that level of fast, but you're supposed to attain light speed in the sense of being pure information, pure intelligence, pure data, pure time potentials. So I love teaching about that, how to build the dimensions and the cognitive steps that happened in there. I got a lot of that truthfulness from a great series that's on YouTube by Rob Bryanton called Envisioning the 10 Dimensions. And he is a musician by nature and makes his animations very lighthearted, very creative, very well done. They've been up on YouTube for a long amount of time. They're hat tip to Rob Bryanton. They're worth checking out, and they are very well crafted animations that you can look at. There's so much more. The initial and I'm going to go through my notes to make sure I got everything, and then soon I'll have to take Chicky for a walk. The most important thing of everything, if you're like, Aurora, my brain is leaking out of my ears, like, stop it, I'm gonna die. Okay, you're not gonna die, you're safe. But if you feel overwhelmed, the big takeaway from everything that I've shared with you about the structure of time and the nature of reality is that the very first cognitive leap was the most important thing. When you were the zeroth dimension, this super dense starting point of potentiality that contains everythingness. That's how I know you're there, because it contains everything and everyone. And at a certain point, you had to think the thought, what if part of me wasn't here with me, but was somehow somewhere else or moving at a different rate? That is the initial cognitive leap. That leap is analogous to the same type of leap that you make when you say, here I am at this level of complexity and embodiment, and then here I am at this level of complexity. Leap into the next highest dimension. So at a certain point in your history, you, as the zeroth dimension, had to leap into the first dimension. How do you even do that? This is another thing to just even think about while you're lying in bed at night trying to fall asleep. How do you even do that? How do you think about, like, I'm in the zeroth dimension and I contain everything and I'm infinity and I move at infinity speed, and then somehow I'm going to have the thought about what it would be like if I was somewhere else? Where are you going to be? There is nowhere else. There is nowhere else. But somehow you're going to invent somewhere else with that thought structure of what if I was somewhere else, and then put a part of yourself in that somewhere else. But you're still going to be in infinity. That's what you did. And as soon as you did that one time, then you're like, that was fun, let's do it again. And you created the second dimension. And you were like, that was fun, let's do it again. And you created the third dimension. You were like, that was fun, let's do it again. And you created the fourth dimension. And that is how you've been moving through time. And when you move through time, you don't just have one timeline. That's what I'm trying to say. The fourth dimension is a line, and it represents a timeline, but you have a multi-dimensional array of different timelines that represent all of the iterations of reality. So on my piano, I have various different songs I can play, and these represent different iterations of how you can put notes together. I can play this song. Let's make it a little louder for you. Watch out, headphones people. That's one song that I can make with these 88 keys, but then I can make this song with these 88 keys. Two different songs, same instrument, two different songs. Please think about how many different songs exist in the human songbook, jukebox, song record, all played with the piano. There's everything from Mozart to, pop music, to Billy Joel, whatever. I say that because someone was mentioning that in the comments of a previous YouTube video I did. Every single different type of song that is played on the piano. Same 88 keys, very, very, very great variety of different styles and types of songs. That is what we're talking about when we talk about all the different multiple timelines that represent you. And in those various different multiple timelines, you have a probability structure. The ones that are around the edges are actually the least probable, the most probable, but the least accurate to who you are as a person. And that central core timeline that goes up the center is the least likely, least probable reality structure, but is the one that most accurately portrays you in terms of your divine persona. It's the real you. So just like in your eyes, you have your retina, and on your retina, you have photosensitive cells that are known as your retina cells. And these are receptors. And you have a concentration of receptors in your focal point known as the fovea. So you guys can play about with your fovea. Your fovea right now is focused on like the screen. You're looking at your computer, your phone, or whatever it is. But if you wiggle your fingers out to the side of your peripheral, oh, I can see, I'm staring ahead, but I see my fingers are out there on the side. They're wiggling. I can't exactly see exactly what they're doing, but they're doing something out there. That's your peripheral vision. And your peripheral vision contains fewer receptors than your focal point. It is meant to give you a generalized idea of like something is happening over there, but I don't know exactly what. In time, you have a peripheral perception of those aspects of yourself that either get eaten by an alligator or a meteorite falls on your head or smashed up on the highway, whatever are these great unlikelihoods that exist as part of reality structure, but they're not the central focus of who and what you are. And those are unlikely outliers in terms of events. Like again, like you wake up in the morning, you never even make a cup of coffee because an alligator flies in through the window and bites your cranium open and you die. Like that doesn't really happen, but it could happen if an alligator fell out of an airplane and blah, 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 and you lived in the Everglades or something like that. I'm coming up with silliness, examples, but you understand. Or being hit on the head by a meteorite or any of these things. Like these things happen, but the likelihood of them is a far outlier, and it's not the true definition of who you are. And the whole point of experiencing the chakras and these various different reality structures is a refocusing of you towards your true characteristics, towards your greatness, towards the song of you that most accurately represents who and what you are as God moving through time. That there's a lot of stuff crap around the edges. That's not who you really are. Those aren't the real you. It's not the real you because of death or disease or amputation or injury. It's not the real you because of starvation or lack of opportunity or things that you didn't have that you really needed to have. It's not the real you because it was not an ideal situation or environment or ecosystem for you to be able to develop and be the real you. For whatever reason, it's not the real you. Then you have that central core timeline. That is the real you. And your cosmic job is to explore and refine yourself until you are 100% in alignment with that version of reality. That is the real you. That version of reality is connected to the white dot up here and the white dot that is below your feet, and is part of this perfect matrix of reflections back and forth, perfect, in between these different 0 points, and I'll get to your question or comment about 0 point, that you are a consciousness impulse reflecting back and forth and meeting yourself as you interact with these convergence points. You meet yourself. That's me. Kapow, you meet yourself. But out of that meeting of self coming from a different direction, you then bounce into the next direction. And all of this I didn't even get to. I'm going to have to end class soon, but I didn't even get to. Maybe I'll do another continuation for next week. The sense of when you do these pathways moving through the chakra system, you don't just go through, the red level of reality. You don't just go through the red level of reality. You go out here, you converge into or coalesce into the physicality structure, but then you know what? Your journey back to zeroth dimension and non-physicality means first you have to circulate through the orange, the emotional. Then you go to the singularity. Then you have to circulate through the yellow. Go to the singularity. Then you circulate through the green, go to the singularity. Then you circulate through light blue, then through dark blue, then through violet, then you get back to singularity. And that's just one loop of this. And this has many, many, many multiple loops. So when I show you a picture of my painting, like this painting over here, you have these many, many, many layers of the subtle body. You as an impulse don't just circulate like from the source into the red, then from the red back to the source. you circulate from the source into physicality structure, but you actually first come through violet, then dark blue, then light blue, then green, then yellow, then orange, then red, then from red back up through orange, through yellow, through green, through light blue, through dark blue, back to violet, and then back to the source. And that doesn't just happen in terms of the overarching structure of your physicality body, that happens for every single cell of your body. So every single cell of your body has to get in alignment with the perfect source and emanation and destination of information and energy and creative life force, sustenance and awareness, and all of the spirals that come through the various different levels of density or dimensionality have to go through all of those refinements in order to come outward from and return to the source. And that is what living on the ascension or eternity pathway is, and that is what the destination experience is. I know at a certain point my words become so complex that I know that the meaning fails, but then I just get a little bit frustrated. Let me get to your question. Comment. Lisa Metro, thank you for being here, says 0 point time is being creator and creation simultaneously, streaming in unlimited dimensions. Yes, I think that that's perfectly accurate and apt way of saying it. So 0 point, this is what a lot of people in the modern world and researchers and communicators and spiritual seekers are calling this convergence point. So it is the 0th dimension. They are also describing this as 0 point. So for example, you can create a electromagnetic field that is toroidal. And so this is lesson 2. I literally only just did over 3 hours part 2 of lesson 2. And lesson 2 has actually 4 parts to it, and they're all incredibly deep and profound. Watch the whiteboards, watch the whiteboards, watch my whiteboards. I feel like, like Crazy Eddie or something. Crazy Eddie, Crazy Eddie, Crazy Eddie. But no, really, watch my whiteboards, because I have a whole teaching that relates this shape to electromagnetism. So electromagnetism is a phenomenon of the 5 senses world. It is a phenomenon that is perceived from the world of physics and physicists in universities. And there's a validity to perceiving that there, but it is not analogous to or directly analogous to everything that is happening in the world of pure non-optical light information. What is known as the quest for 0 point energy is when a lot of people are building these toroidal magnetic structures and recognizing that there are various different phenomena that arise associated with the center of those structures. Sometimes the structures are called Rodin coils, R-O-D-I-N. There's a wonderful educator who is still alive on Earth named Marco Rodin, who has created a type of math called vortex-based math. You can look into his work, Rodin coil, vortex-based math, or VBM, which is wonderful stuff that has to do with perceiving math more higher dimensionally, not only as a linear equation with, again, Arabic numerals, 1 + 1 = 2 or 1 + 2 = 3, but instead describing all math functions and experiences as vectors of forces that move around a toroidal shape. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division all have to do with how energy is moving across a shape very, very, very similar to this. So that's incredible positive integument between the work that other people are doing and the work that I bring here as a direct perceiver of the highest dimensional space, type of information that comes from that level of reality. 0 point energy is what happens when you make magnets in the physical reality that can be perceived with your 5 senses and described from the laws of physics. There's something that is called over-unity, and that's when you get more out of something than you put into something. You're like, okay, I put 5 units of energy into this magnetic structure, but somehow I'm getting 5.2 units of energy out of it. Something's going on here, and something magical, and maybe I can harness it or use it in my commodification model in order to make electrons flow in my wire for 3 cents cheaper, for less expensive electricity. This is what largely the quest for 0 point energy has been from the linear model of human cognition, also based in commodification in terms of, hey kid, I'm chomping my cigar, get a job, you got to pay for stuff. This doesn't happen for free. And how many times have you might have heard that in your house, like, close the refrigerator. I ain't paying for that. That energy isn't free. the quest for free energy as a way to run your home appliances. But I really want you to know this, and I say this every year in my semesters. What you begin with as a human collective in researching 0-point energy as a quest for cheaper electricity or energy that you can use for your home appliances transforms into a deep spiritual transformation, a recontextualization of what reality is, and a re-evaluation of your priorities and value structure that deprioritizes having an electric light bulb and being able to have artificial light or appliances to see, and re-elevates the focus on spiritual attainment as the quest for total freedom and the non-necessity of external technology. So initially, 0-point energy as a way to harness over unity energy, get more stuff for free, do my electric lights for cheaper, maybe even commodify stuff and sell stuff. And then you kind of realize at the end of the journey, you're like, not only do I not want to make my electricity cheaper, I don't want to have to sell stuff. I don't want to have to commodify stuff. Energy is everywhere. I'm part of it. I'm an energy being, part of an energetic continuum that is part of everything that's everywhere. I don't feel the need to have to partition and sell off parts of myself to pieces of myself for some kind of economy or commodity. And that what I'm really interested in is levels of direct perception, attainment, and the attainment of being able to directly create reality structures in a frictionless form that is known as bliss. To move from moment to moment with zero friction, with your chakras in perfect alignment to divine intelligence, doing and thinking and saying and being exactly the right things to lead to eternal life, totally abrogating the necessity of electric lights. Your value system just totally changes. So back to Lisa's comment, 0-point time is being creator and creation simultaneously, streaming in unlimited dimensions. Yes, and that's beautifully well said, and I can tell that you're on that proper focus of attainment, because you are the zeroth dimension and you have already had this journey of thinking, well, what if I'm the zeroth dimension and I'm everything that ever could be, but a piece of me is somewhere else and a piece of me is over there. So a piece of me is like, a piece of me is Aurora, and a piece of me is Marie Redmond, and a piece of me is Lisa Metro, and a piece of me is Joyce, and a piece of me is Charlie B, and a piece of me is everyone who watches this video, and a piece of me is a blade of grass outside, and a piece of me is a microbe in my stomach. It becomes incredibly yes, it's all a piece of you that you all externalized through this process of the multidimensional branching of reality. And then also you recognize in being embedded within your experience as creator, you're like, I'm also embedded within my experience. And then there's the reconvergence. Like you separate white light, the primacy of unity consciousness, into its diffraction, many multicolored levels of reality. Then you turn it around, you take the diffracted light and you refocus it all together until it is that focal point of white light again. And that is when each one of us comes together and we're on this beautiful journey of being like, I'm that microbe, I'm those blades of grass, I'm all these people in this class, and unity consciousness. You come together and recognize that you vector into converging with all of those other aspects of self. And that's not the end, because again, you're building the channel tunnel. So a piece of you comes from this direction, a piece of you comes from this direction, and you come together and you fit perfectly and you don't stop. You fit perfectly, bounce against each other, turn in the opposite direction, and keep going like this. And that's the next expansion, explosion. And then those guys meet with someone else over here. Kapow. Those guys meet together and they don't stop. They converge, they come together, and they split apart back to here. And then this impulse that came over to here meets this impulse that's coming from over to here, and they come together and they split apart again. That is this in-breath, out-breath, oscillation, eternity structure. And it's a beautiful eternity structure. It's not running on the hamster wheel. It's not being imprisoned. It's not diminishment. It's not nihilism or existentialism of nothing matters. Why do this? Why try? Nothing matters. Get me out of here. Mommy, daddy, help me. All of that comes from being in the rat maze where you get zapped for doing the right thing. That is like bullcrap and very, very wrong, and I don't agree with it. The world is supposed to be a pristine system where you learn and grow and are refined, and it has a huge amount of meaning and profundity. And then when you come together into these vectors and you meet with yourself and you expand to the next level of reality, that's also super profound. It means something. It means something. That means something. And that means something. And that means something. You're supposed to be actually submerged within an ocean of meaningfulness, of accurate information. It's the opposite of nihilism. Nihilism is the philosophy that says nothing matters. Do whatever you want. Do this, do that. Kill yourself, kill everyone. Don't kill yourself, don't kill everyone. Jump off a bridge, eat chocolate, take drugs. It doesn't matter because nothing matters, because nihilism. But this is not nihilism. But you recognize that you can come up with a philosophy called nihilism if you get zapped for going in the right direction in reality. That is literally why there's a lot of trauma in this world that has created these different philosophies about meaninglessness in the world. But I'm here to tell you that the world is perfectly calibrated, profoundly meaningful, and that you just are living in a non-pristine system, which is under active reconstruction right now. So Pedro says, my connection is choppy, even with all the Merkabah. So before it gets worse, love the lasagna. Thank you so much, Pedro. Truly. Love received. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here, even if you're on your cell phone and it's not the best connection that you have. I appreciate taking time to be a great student and attenuate to class. I'll open the floor to any more questions or comments. I feel like I didn't even get to so much of what I wanted to get to today, but I think I emphasized the things that are the most important. To me, this is the most empowering aspect of what I have to teach and share. The sense that you have, like, I make a painting like this. If I just shared it, showed people a painting, they'd be like, okay, that's cool. Like, there's stuff, and then there's more stuff. I'm like, this stuff is you. The energy field that is around you is you. It's not just energy. It's literally stories about you. Those are stories about you. Those are timelines that directly relate to you as a person, experiencer in the world. So these aren't just mathematical abstractions or potentialities. These are real experienced reality structures, and they matter to you. And that also means, in a very, very real sense, that you're invested in what happens because it's you. It's not just like, if you do a math homework wrong, like 4 plus 3 equals 8. It's like, that, Aurora, that's wrong math. It is wrong math. But if you're just working in levels of abstraction, you're like, math schmath, who cares? But if it's you, and 4 plus 3 is supposed to equal 7, eternal life, and instead you say equals 8, and you hit the membrane of death, that matters. Definitely. It relates to your reality structures of what you're actually doing in the world and how you're actually driving the car of your awareness through reality structures. And all of this stuff that I teach you is profound stuff, and it's more than just something to keep you from being bored if you can't sleep at night. All of it is precursor, foundation, music theory, to being able to comprehend and know what flying rainbow lasagna is. So first you must know and master the torus, and what the torus is, and what that singularity is, and what the levels of the flow of energy are happening at that level of reality. Then you become a virtuoso, and you master that, and you add an additional dimension, and you add an additional degree of freedom on top of there. So every time you make a leap from the zeroth dimension to the first dimension, from the first dimension to the second spatial dimension, from the second spatial dimension into the third dimension, and from the third dimension into time, moving through time, which is the fourth dimension, those are all amazing cognitive leaps. You need to be able to master making that leap from this stage of dimensionality. First, know what your chakras are and be at this stage of dimensionality. Add another dimension means you leap into this stage of reality. And that's everything for my work. It's my purpose for being here, why I make this artwork, and why I teach these classes. Because again, it's not intuitively obvious to people who look at a picture or a sculpture that I made that that's what this is all about. So I have had to learn how to be articulate with words and to kind of speak through your cultural paradigm, which is objective materialist science of physics and of the five senses realm, to be able to get you to comprehend that this is all guidance and inspiration as to how to leap into the next dimension. And big truism from math, when you gain an additional dimension, you gain an additional degree of freedom. And that means you can do more stuff. So when you went from the 0th dimension into the 1st dimension, you didn't become less powerful. It's not like, oh no, I'm getting made into material. Now I'm getting stuck. I'm embodied. No, far from it. The more complex you became and the more additional dimensions you created as God self, the more levels of empowerment and freedom you achieved. And then it was necessary to create the next level of empowerment or augmentation to be able to rectify the non-ideal circumstances that had arisen due to the not fullness or not complete picture of cosmic law up until that time. That cosmic law is like pretty good, pretty tight stuff, but it wasn't complete. That there were imbalances and unfairnesses. How in the world could I be zapped if I'm doing the right thing? And you should be angry. You should have attitude and neck. The answer is cosmic law exists and it was being enforced effectively, but it wasn't the totality of cosmic law. That you had to write another law, an addendum to what had previously been established. Flying rainbow lasagna. Create another layer of truthfulness to all the other layers of truth so that things work out fairly. And I'm going to wrap up soon, but now I'm going to make you do math again. If you guys ever remember the order of operations, the acronym to remember this is called Please Excuse My Dear Aunt Sally. P for parentheses, then E for exponents, M for multiply, D for divide, A for addition, S for subtraction. And when you do that in a math equation, you get the right answer because you did the right order of operations. So when you are enforcing cosmic law, you have to do Please Excuse My Dear Aunt Sally, because what you have to do is enforce cosmic law in the right order so that you maintain the structure of reality. If you don't have things in the right order, you don't have reality anymore. Like, that's kind of the nice thing about this. This is not like cosmic law where it's like, a puffed up person, a magistrate who wears a powdered wig and says tap 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 tap. Tapping my my gavel. I decree that this is truthful. I decree that this is cosmic law. Now go off. I've just given you cosmic law. It is not that. It is not a person arbitrarily with a powdered wig deciding things according to what is convenient to them. Cosmic law is literally like math structure of the cosmos, and you don't negotiate or quibble. It's not personal. Just like death is an impersonal force, cosmic law is also an impersonal force that you want to maintain. I'm telling you this, unless you're hugely self-destructive, like some evil things are hugely self-destructive and they're like, I don't want to exist, and I don't want any of you to exist either, like kill it all. Unless you're profoundly evil like that, and I don't think that any of my audience is profoundly evil, but if you're not evil, you want cosmic law to be enforced. It's like the laws of gravity. You don't want it to be like, well, you know something, maybe you could just let me do this, and then you don't have to enforce cosmic law, and then blah, blah, blah. It doesn't really matter. I'm making a silly face here. You'd be like, Aurora, you really don't want that because then the universe will die. Be like, can you just subvert cosmic law a little bit for me? You'd be like, no, you really don't want that because if you do that, you destabilize the entirety of cosmic infrastructure everywhere. Be like, okay, let's have cosmic law then. It's not like that. It's like this. Hooray. Let's embrace cosmic law. Cosmic law is our friend. Cosmic law is positive. Cosmic law and these structures that I told you about in terms of how dimensions are created and upheld is a positive thing. It is life-giving. It is life-sustaining. It is actually something that you, as God self, generated and created with an enormous amount of genius and many, many levels of fail-safe. What is fail-safe called? The word is escaping me. It's when you have data in many different places. oh, it's an R word. It'll come to me. But you know what I mean? Many different levels of if something goes wrong over here, you got it over here. Like saving different things on your hard drive, on various different hard drives. So you have various different, I'll remember this word long after it's, sometimes my brain doesn't work, long after it's relevant. But you will have all of these different places where your data is saved and can be retrieved in case there's a catastrophic failure. You created all of this. And you created all these fail safes in the program of what it is to be alive, and you also sustain it. You sustain the architecture that you created by being here with your observership. You're God. You're God. Spoiler alert, you're God. And you're also on the journey to remembering God's self and reclaiming those powers and capacitations. So right now you might be like, I'm God. Like, how come I even need to get in my car and drive to the store to buy some coconut milk? The answer is because you're God, and you're still in the process of remembering and reclaiming yourself as God's self. And at a certain point, just like with 0 point energy, you will be able to just totally and completely manifest your coconut milk, anything else that you need, but your motivations will change and recalibrate profoundly, because you will no longer just be about like, oh, cool, like I can manifest coconut milk and I don't have to worry about my grocery bills. Yes, but also everything about what you can do and what you prioritize and what is important to you will change in light of your capacity to manifest. That is what planetary ascension is. Each one of us becomes recognizing of our amazing powers to be able to manifest the world, and our motivations for commodifications, and just looking out for number one, change into how can I serve the entirety. And Joyce, you have helped me out immensely, because Joyce read my mind and said the answer is redundant. Redundancies. Thank you, Joyce. Yeah, that was the word I was looking for. There's multiple redundancies in the brilliant genius of how the divine presence has created cosmic architecture. And that's it. And then if one thing fails, there's 20 million different backups for a purpose, because this whole entire system is too important to fail. So I only scratched the surface. My shoulders go down, guys. I feel like I didn't even get everything across to you, and I talked to you for 3 hours, but I have to end class for right now. And I'm going to take Cheeky for a walk because I promised her, and we didn't do anything earlier this morning. Please watch the whiteboards. So if you're an enrolled student and you don't yet have them, the whiteboards have migrated to Vimeo. I'm very happy to share them with any patrons, anybody who's in this class. If you're a YouTube non-official class person, welcome, and I love you, and I'm happy that you're here. You can enroll, or you can contact me. Just contact me at my email, flyingrainbowlasagna@me.com. I'll send you the logins. Although of course I want people to support my work and pay me tuition. I can pay for my electrons and my light bulbs and everything like that. I want you to have the whiteboards. So if you want access to those and you don't yet have them, please just contact me. They're amazing, they're profound, they're worth it, and I'm amazed by how much I was able to know and articulate 10 years ago, and I was just like very much struggling to make my brain connect to my mouth and to be able to share these concepts. And the concepts are 100% about your self-empowerment on the journey. And guess what? I want you to be empowered. It's not a contest to see who can be like the lone person at the top of a pyramid-shaped hierarchy. It is a lateral hierarchy. I want you to be empowered, because the more good musicians we have in the band, in the reality band, the better the music is. The more good musicians we have in the symphony of life, the better the symphony is. So I want each of you to be totally empowered, create good reality structures, not burnt cookies, and for all of the music or food that you make here in reality with your observership to be the best series of events you can possibly experience. I want each one of you to be on your ascension timeline or pathway, experiencing totality, renewal, profound healing in your mind, body, and spirit, and of course God's self-remembrance, because that's the best timeline. The greatest timeline is the one where not only a person as an individual achieves their greatness and their self-remembrance, but where all consciousness everywhere achieves its greatness and its self-remembrance, and all of these divergent vectors come together to the culmination point. I am God. And that's not the end, because then you spring off into the next iteration or proliferation of events. So that's where I'm going to wrap it up for. I think that's a good wrapping up point. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We'll end the recording for right now, and then just take a few moments to talk with everyone who's in the meeting. Thank you, and profound thanks to everyone who's in my class.